At this time, I'll call our March Board of Commissioners meeting to order. I will stand at this time, and Commissioner Rebbolz will have the invocation, and Commissioner Booth will do the pledge.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you and the people of this county to do your work in this world. Guide our discussions, and may any of our decisions be pleasing unto you. We say this in your Son's name, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Place the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask that you silence your cell phone or cut it completely off or give us $50. You've heard of inflation. We've gone from 25 to 50. Everybody better make sure they're off.
Every time somebody says that like that, usually the speaker.
That's right. That's right. At this time, I'll recognize Dolores for one of our employee recognitions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We have one employee that we'd like to recognize tonight, Miss Jennifer Hopkins, and she has been with Beaufort County for 5 years now in our finance department. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to make a speech?
At this time, we're down to, I'm sorry, I skipped over the conflict of interest. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest with any of the agenda items tonight? Hearing none, we need to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, thank you. Down to public comments. The first one is Connie.
I'd like to welcome to our section of the Wild Wild West in Beaufort County where anything goes. We are asking to be put on the next agenda that is scheduled to explain and show evidence of our neighborhood's problem with sewage water being pumped uphill 10 feet from our well. We have communicated this to the Department of Inspections. We have 10 neighbors this nasty water is affecting, with their children playing in ditches and possible contamination of 2 wells. Even after the positive fecal coliform report, Stacy refused my request to come check out the situation after a recent rain. So maybe we are not talking to the right people at the health department. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Connie Ireland, and I am a medical lab technician. I am ASCP certified. Deerfield Acres was developed by an engineer to drain with the lay of the land for the best drainage. However, a couple of backyard neighbors behind Deerfield filled in a big drainage ditch that had a continuous connection with Deerfield's back easement to drain all the water from the back to the mouth of the creek as designed. Then they maintained this path for years to ride four-wheelers. I suspect the pumps came into play when they realized just how much water had been blocked without this ditch to naturally drain it. But the health department wants to claim they can't find exactly where this nasty water is coming from. I can tell them where it's coming from because these guys take ownership of this water as soon as they pump it. Septic tanks have to be 100 feet from a drinking well when they are inspected. So why is this allowed within 10 feet of our well? We are in a suit with these neighbors and right now are just interested in persuading them to help solve the problem. We are trying to get help needed from the health department before we feel a need to expand this suit. But still, that wouldn't address the health issue this nasty water is likely to inflict. We are willing to help do our part and help ourselves and the 3 neighborhoods affected, but the 2 back neighbors that are pumping are all about themselves. These guys will not come and participate in solving the problem until the pumps are removed or daily fees are applied to them for non-compliance of removal of the pumps. Please help us.
Thank you. Thank you. Dot?
Can you hear me? Do I have to pull this down?
Yeah, pull it down a little
Okay.
bit. Dot. Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you that remind us, at the last meeting, I believe there was a discussion about different storage things along the roadside and the fact that a lot of it needed to be cleaned up. So I went out today on Magnolia School Road, and as you can see from the pictures, the first picture shows the old house with everything you can imagine in bags and things out in front of it. And then the second one is a picture of the right next to it. And then the other one is further down. And if further down you go on that road, almost all the way back to where it would go around and come back to the river road, it's just like that on both sides of the road. And I'd like to request that the county send somebody out there to clean that up. It's a terrible situation. But I wanted you to see what we saw today. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see either one of our legislative representatives, so we'll move to the items for consent. Could I get a motion, or does anyone want to pull?
I want to pull item number 2 for a vote,
Okay, item number 2, so we'll,
which has to do with the program for the computer program for the water department.
okay. Any other items to be pulled? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion and approving the all of the items that's set number 2, please raise your right hand. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. This time we're down to items for presentation, and the first one is a presentation of thanks. And this is Commissioner Chris Chadwick from Carteret County. Chris, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here before you tonight. As many of you know, we had a tragic plane crash in Carteret County on February 13th, and lost 4 of our young students at East Carteret High School and 4 adults. And as we began the recovery mission, once we located the plane out in the ocean, we said, what do we do next? We need some divers. And someone suggested calling the Sydney dive team. So I called an older gentleman named Catfish late that night, and he informed me that he'd aged out of it a little bit, but he put me in touch with Chief Swain, I believe, and the next day at 10 a.m. they had a full crew of people there to help us, and they spent the night with us, come back a second day, and those people were very efficient, well-equipped, and very compassionate folks, and we're indebted to them gratefully, and appreciate your support. We have mailed a real check, but for what I have here tonight is a check for $12,000 to the Sydney dive team, because they told me they needed to purchase another helmet so they could talk back and forth underwater and also video what they were seeing. So it was a very touching group, very hardworking. The boys said it was a ministry to them, and they were a blessing to our county and our folks down east, and we were greatly appreciative of them and for you commissioners supporting them as well. So we'd like to present you with this check. The old adage, the check's in the mail, the real check is in the mail. But, we appreciate it. If Carteret County can ever do anything to help you, certainly we're a phone call away.
Thank you very much, Chris. As you and I were talking before the meeting, you don't realize how important these guys are until you have that accident. And the families are just trying to determine what happened and where the bodies are. So
we're hoping to give the families some closure, and I think we're well on the way to doing that. But without the Sydney dive team, we would be nowhere along the journey that we are right now.
Well, we thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
How deep was the water?
60 feet.
60 feet?
It was very rough Sunday night, 6-7 foot seas. Monday was pretty good, but then Tuesday when they came to work, it was rough again, and they worked all day Tuesday, spent the night. We put them up in a hotel, and they worked again on Wednesday and finished it up. So
Thank you.
they had about 7 guys, and the very good team they have. So we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Did we get a picture?
Yeah, the whole thing was bad.
Will it be in the paper?
Posted in the paper.
Pardon?
Will that picture be in the paper? I don't see anybody there here with it.
They can fix that.
Okay, we're down to item number 2 for presentation, the ankle bracelet. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. At the last meeting, there were some questions regarding the pretrial monitoring, the pretrial release with monitoring program, which is commonly referred to as the ankle bracelet program. So we asked if there would be a representative from law enforcement and someone from the judicial side. And I'm pleased tonight, Charlie Rose with the Sheriff's Office is here, and Mr. Tom Anglam, Assistant District Attorney, is here to answer questions the board may have about the program. It was my understanding y'all wanted to learn a little bit about the program and have someone who could answer questions related to that. You have at your seats a copy of a sheet that the judges and the DAs use relating to what is not eligible. They are the ineligible offenses for pretrial release programs. So but it's my understanding, and having a conversation with Judge Parker this afternoon, that there is some discretion on the judge's part. That they are ultimately the ones that make that decision, and that if they have situations where they can control certain aspects of it, then they may allow pretrial release with monitoring, even though it may be an ineligible, if they're extenuating circumstances that they feel it's a safe opportunity. So if there are questions, Mr. Tom Anglam and Chief Rose, well, Tom, you might be lone wolfing it today.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I guess probably the best thing I can do is say, any questions?
That's the easy out.
That's the easy out. Brian said it well, as far as what we're trying to accomplish. And working hand in hand not only with judges but also the sheriff's office and the operation of the jail. So.
Questions concerning the ankle bracelet?
Can you describe to us how the process flows?
Sure. Generally, there's different ways it can begin. It can begin by judge. It can begin by defendant / defense attorney, and sometimes we can initiate. ourselves within the district attorney's office that process. And it really depends upon what the offense is, what that individual's prior record level would be, the nature of the offenses, if there's concerns for public safety, property of our citizens, or something else within the community that we're concerned about. Once the process is initiated, the question is this person a good candidate? If they are, then what kind of limitations can we put, or we should put, on their movements? We can have exclusion zones, areas that are basically prohibited from attending or being around. I guess in a broad sense, you could have electronic house arrest. Basically, you could lock them down 24/7 within their homes as well, and allow them to, or prevent them from going outside of those ranges. However, it's flexible from that perspective, and obviously it serves a purpose of trying to make sure that person doesn't pose a risk to others or the community, as well as making sure that, you know, the administration of justice goes smoothly and they're not sitting in jail languishing in a pretrial confinement situation.
I think the reason that this got sparked was we've had people from murderers to drug addicts out on pretrial release, and yet we're holding somebody in a cell for a $500 bond.
I personally, in my experience of 28 years, I don't relate them together. Okay? There may be other reasons why that person, obviously the financial issues are there for that person is a $500 bond and can't make it. But if that person is in a situation where they have a trial a couple of months ahead and we're informed by the sheriff's office of that status, sometimes we unilaterally modify bonds. The judges kind of give us permission to do that so that a person who is really not looking at any active time, if they're convicted, doesn't sit there and languish for a period of time that would be greater than their sentence if they were to get an active sentence, depending on the offense that they're charged with. So yeah, I think we share that concern. Sometimes, obviously, it doesn't work perfectly, and it is a communication thing. And I will say that for the most part, we have an open line of communication with the folks that administer the jail with respect to this issue. Defense attorneys contact us on a regular basis about these matters in order to try to facilitate the release of those individuals.
Tom, if you don't mind, I think you also, either you were at the meeting or you're a part of that meeting with the bond reform group that's working in North Carolina.
That's correct.
Could you speak to that as well?
We're, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, a guinea pig of a bond program initiated through the Institute of Government, where a magistrate goes through a process of workflow process to determine where this person should fit within a range of bonds depending on their offenses, their criminal history, and the nature of the crime. And once the magistrate goes through that process, then the magistrate will utilize our schedule of bonds to assign a bond. I would probably venture to say in the time that we've had it in Beaufort County, well, two things changed. Number one, the legislature kind of changed the way warrants versus summonses are issued, right? So that a private citizen used to go down to the magistrate's office and 99% of the time will get a warrant for that person's arrest, right? Well, that's changed where most of those processes today are summonses, which means served, show up for court. So they're not arrested. That's reduced the numbers greatly of people that are actually arrested. To correspond with that is that for those that are arrested, we've seen a great reduction in the secured bonds, right, that will keep somebody in jail past a reasonable period of time that they can't make. Again, you're talking about a communication thing where a lot of people are writing us letters, writing judges letters, and saying, hey, can I get out on bond? This is my bond. This is what I can make. And, of course, then we engage in an analysis of what's their record. Is it like, for example, a domestic violence case? And then what's a reasonable bond based upon that. To correspond with domestic violence, we have a program called Caitlin's Courage that we implement and use to facilitate not only release of individuals that are charged with domestic violence cases, but pointing them in the direction of treatment pre-trial in an effort to try to, again, and within that is exclusion zones, protecting of the witness and the victim within those cases in order to facilitate rehabilitation pre-trial in that sense. Yes, sir.
Randy?
Out of the people with ankle bracelets, what is the failure rate? Like the judge says, it's not working for you, and we're taking the ankle bracelet off.
I probably can't speak to the exact numbers. I probably would have to defer to the sheriff's office for the exact numbers of failures. From an anecdotal perspective, we don't have many failures. Most of the time people want to get out of jail. And most of the time people will do what they want to do and need to do to stay out of jail. And those folks that do that are successful within the program. Are there failures? Yes. Have I seen them? Yes. I would probably venture to guess that if I were a betting man, when that person got on the PTR program or that person got on a PTR program, I probably would have made a lot of money betting on their recidivist, them being a recidivist in some sense of the word. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Look, this is going to sound like a criticism when it starts off, but it's really not. You mentioned that the program is flexible, and I'm looking at the 6 people who are on the program now. We have a felony sex offense. We have a murder. We have a DWI conviction. We have a felony desecration of a grave. We have someone who is sentenced to report to jail. We got out on the thing, report on a certain date, and we have drug offense. Well, all of those except one is on your list of exclusions. Now, I'm glad you got your list of exclusions, and I certainly support the flexibility within the system because there's no doubt that every individual is different. Consequently, you can make those decisions. The one thing I would like to see more people on this program, and I can see from having gone over the jail list this weekend that most of the people that are in jail should be there, and they would have trouble qualifying under your list of exceptions. There is one thing that has been somewhat of a problem for law enforcement for a long time, and that is people who are under the supervision of probation and parole. And I was in court a week or so ago on something, not charged, but the but the judge did a quick dip for somebody. That's the first time I'd ever been in court and seen that. I'd heard about it. I'm not so sure that there's not a point of people who give probation and parole trouble. That there's about 8 or 9 of them in there now in jail who give them trouble if you have a place to put them, like they're living with a mother, and a lot of these people are not from structured families, or a wife, or just living with somebody else, that they shouldn't be out on probation and parole with that person. I mean, I know my mother, and I know my wife, and I wouldn't want to be around the house in an ankle bracelet, I can tell you that, because you're cornered. I would ask as a commissioner that you consider some flexibility in the quick dip program. Maybe at some point it's mixed in if they've been in there twice or something, and you're trying to keep from having to put them in prison, that maybe you experiment with this and try this. It could work.
Not disagreeing with your point. I think there are a lot of variables at play there, if I may, just by way of example. If a judge puts somebody on probation for a drug offense and says the first time you test positive, you're in jail on a $25,000 bond, right? That's out of our hands. Now, a defense attorney could then go to the judge and seek to modify that in some way, all right? But that's really a different creature from the PTR perspective. I think the other thing that we find with Superior Court judges and District Court judges is what they call delegation of authority to the probation parole folks. And what that gives those folks the ability to do is look for alternative resources. Look for those alternatives that will best serve the rehabilitation of that offender to make them a more productive member of our community. It doesn't always work, right? And so they're either reoffending, that is, they're getting arrested on something which is a violation of the parole, and the probation parole folks have no options but to report that person back. I think the other thing that often happens with a person who may have that mindset is they do what's called absconding. That is, they stop wanting to be supervised and act in accordance with their desire not to be supervised, okay? And if they're absconding, they're going to stay in jail for the most part, because you're not going to take the risk. And I don't know many bondsmen that would take a risk in posting the bonds of somebody that's already absconded. So as far as the exclusion cases, there are some stories behind that murder case. I don't want to get into it now because it's still technically pending. And it was put it this way, the things as a result of that happening, we modified the program. We worked closer with the sheriff's office to develop the program and the judges to make sure that we have a process that hopefully something like that won't happen again. There is a peculiarity of that in the fact that it started in juvenile court. Okay, that matter did start in juvenile court. So you have that dynamic involved in that case as well. Okay? Any other questions, gentlemen?
Well, I have a question that's not directly to what we're talking about today. It involves drugs. I understand that there has been a shortening of the supply chain between the cartels in Mexico and local dealers. By that I mean that some of the middlemen have been eliminated and some of these guys are dealing more directly with Mexico. Is that observation have any merit?
Without making any statements about any ongoing investigations, in some respects that's the fair statement. Because of the nature of the supply chain and the communication abilities between those that are elsewhere and those that are local, that is more of an issue in some respects.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
We're down to the Trillium Annual Report. Dave? Welcome to your
Thank you.
annual trip.
Yes.
I know you're here more than that.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, Chairman and Commissioners. Appreciate that. Is this showing up? Okay, great. Thank you. I first want to thank, and I know Commissioner Langley isn't here. He's got another meeting he had to attend. I want to thank him for being the chair of our regional advisory board, but also Jim Madsen, who's on our governing board, and both those two have done a wonderful job. So I want to thank them for doing that. I also just want to briefly introduce Stephanie Webb, if you just raise your hand, Stephanie. Stephanie's our new system of care coordinator that covers Beaufort County. So, as you all know, every year I come here, and this is my 8th or 9th year doing this, talk about who we are, because sometimes people forget who we are. But also some Medicaid transformation changes, which are huge, that are happening. Organizational changes then, and then specific Beaufort County changes. So we are 28 counties now. Last time we talked, we were 26 counties. So I'll talk a little bit about that. About 1.5 total population, about 244,000 Medicaid eligibles. One of the things that was asked to me before the meeting was about the Beaufort County breakdown of that Medicaid eligible, and it's about 13.5% of your total population in Beaufort County that are Medicaid eligibles, which I'm going to try to guess is about 5,500, around there? Yeah, okay. So we serve last year over 58,000 individuals with mild to severe mental health needs, 70% of them with primary diagnosis of mental health, 20% with substance use disorder, SUD, and 10% with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD. Keep in mind, we contract with over 500 agencies in our 28 counties to do those services. Trillium doesn't provide those services directly. We contract that out to do that. And that is about $476 million in services in the last fiscal year. We cover the smallest county, Terrell County in the state, and our largest county is New Hanover County, and that's over about 12,000 square miles of coverage that we provide. I always pull up this map because this map is different than last year. The northern region got an additional county to it. you'll see, if you remember last year, there was a gap between Nash County and Northampton County. Well, Halifax County has joined us. So they have 11 counties up there, about 250,000 people in those 11 counties. The Central Region has 9 counties, 2 counties less, but twice the number of people, with about 500,000 people in those 9 counties. And then in the Southern Region, they have a new county also, and that's Bladen County, and they just joined us last month. And they have almost 800,000 people. So back in 2018, I started talking with you all about where the state was going with the coverage of Medicaid individuals. Well, it not only started the talk in 2018, it was implemented this past year. 5 companies, the 5 up there, AmeriHealth, Blue Cross, United, WellCare, and Carolina Complete Health, they now serve the individuals that Trillium used to serve that have mild to moderate mental health issues. Okay? They're now serving those individuals, and it's about 70 to 75% of the total number of people that we served that we served the previous year. So next year when I'm here, remember the numbers that I gave you, the total number served? It's going to go way down, because this number that I gave you was last fiscal year's. Next year when I'm out here, the total number that we have served is going to go way down. They started, those private insurance companies started on July 1, 2021. Yes, sir.
What areas do they serve? Or do they serve everything?
The 5 insurance companies, all of them are statewide insurance companies except for Carolina Complete Health. And they serve 3 regions in the state. They cover a couple of our counties, but a majority of our counties are not covered by Carolina Complete Health. But United and AmeriHealth and Blue Cross, they cover folks statewide. So I think I'm going to give an example. If someone in Beaufort County has Medicaid and they are a low to moderate risk individual for mental health, they can choose one of those 5 companies. All right. So the state awarded 7 of the managed care organizations. Trillium was one of them. One of those 7 companies, Carolina Innovations, decided to merge with another one in the western part of the state called VIA. Those of you that have been around a long time, back in 2001, it was said, when we had 41 area programs in the state, we're going to get you down to 3 or 4. Well, we're down to 6, okay? About 20 years later, we're down to 6 of us now, all right? And that was put on by the state. So when Cardinal Innovations decided to merge with VIA, all 20 of Cardinal's counties got to choose where they wanted to go. And Halifax County said, we don't want to be managed by the western part of the state, we want to stay east, so they chose Trillium to come with us. County commissioners said, let's go with Trillium. The other one, Bladen County, was not one of those counties that was part of Cardinal, but they were part of another managed care organization that decided, well, while all this other activity is going on, we want to leave and come to Trillium. Now, if you all remember, Nash County joined us 4 years ago from that MCO, and then Columbus County joined us 2 years ago from that same MCO, and now Bladen County has decided to join us. Yes, sir.
Of the 5 providers that you have, 5 or 7 providers that you have, United and those that,
yep.
Who has the largest number of clients?
Right now, who I'm seeing, and it's fairly close between a lot of them, but I think Blue Cross has the most.
Okay.
And if you think about the names up there,
That's the reason I asked it.
Yep.
Another thing is who's monitoring the one. I mean, this is a numbers game here, and the one that don't have very little client service in our area. Who's monitoring the type of services that we are getting in our area?
Yeah. So and keep in mind, good question, Commissioner Booth. Keep in mind, those are individuals that have low to moderate risks that are now being served by these 5 insurance companies. It's not going to be us that monitors them. It has to be the state that monitors them because they're a managed care organization just like us. So the state is monitoring and a lot of their activity. And we will say there's been some really good stuff that's happened, but we've also heard, okay, that there's been a lot of difficulty in this startup. And let me point out one other thing as we go through this, okay? This last bullet on here, because of some of the bumps in the road that the state ran into with those private insurance companies coming in, our start date was supposed to be July 1, 2022. They bumped us back to December 1 now to give it a little more time to get the infrastructure in place, to get some of the kinks worked out that they ran into with the standard plans. So, exactly, I know what you're asking. Yes. So this now is our map statewide. And if you look at the very light green, that's all of Trillium. All right? Comparatively speaking, you see the really light blue on the western part, and the other light blue counties that are detached. Those are those counties that used to be the Cardinal Innovations that went over and merged. Okay, but let me also point out the pink ones. If you think about that, Alliance Health has the 2 largest counties, and Mecklenburg County chose Alliance because they managed Wake County and felt, okay, if they can manage that big of a county, they can manage us. So that's why Cardinal chose Alliance. All right.
I have a question. When
Yes,
you
sir.
pick up a new county, do they solicit you or do you recruit
Yes.
them?
Yeah, so the way the legislation works is the county commissioners have to approve and put in a request to both our board and to the secretary of DHHS. And then if the county commissioners say we want to move, then they put that request into us. If our board accepts them, and then the request goes up to the state, and then the secretary says yes or no to that. So we have, in order to be ready to become a tailored plan, we are going to have a readiness review in the late summer. Well, we know it's exactly July 13th and 14th that our readiness review is going to be. December 1, December 1, 2022, we're going to be continuing to manage the very high risk, like we do today, those with mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities. But the big addition in December is now we're going to be managing those individuals' physical health. So if they have any medical issues, which we have not overseen before, we're now going to have to oversee that part of the individual. Okay? So the good thing about it, the individual has one insurance company that are covering them, both the mental health and the physical health. So what we have to do is also contract with every single pharmacy in our 28 counties. So, and that's about 2,000 pharmacies. So when people think about 70% of the individuals going over to the insurance company, well, that means you're going to lose, staff then, right? Well, if we're now taking on the physical health of that individual, we now have to oversee all the medical pieces, including pharmacies. We also have to contract, and a majority of the primary care physicians, yours and mine in the eastern part of North Carolina, they take Medicaid individuals in their practice. And so we have to contract with them too because they'll be doing the physical health. Some organizational changes. Lisa Wainwright was our CEO, and Joy Futrell, who's been in the system, don't want to say how many years, but she's been with us a very, very, very long time. She was our Chief Financial Officer, and she's our new CEO. Richard Leisner moved to a new job, and so Sinitria Goodman is our new General Counsel. Sue Ann Forrest, we just hired as our Director of Government Relations. And then we've had to move quite a few staff around with the tailored plan requirements. So some just brief changes. In our call centers, the state's now requiring us in our contract with them to be a tailored plan, to have a pharmacy line, to have a provider line, to have a nurse line, and to have what we have today, a consumer line that anybody can call in. This is required as part of our responsibilities in the call center. We're also needing to make sure that we have staff that are trained to deal with the whole person, not just their mental health and substance use, but so care management has to change. About 2 years ago, hi Commissioner, we added to my department a disaster response unit, and at the last regional board meeting, the commissioners said, make sure you mention this to all the county commissioner meetings. This department meets with our emergency management departments throughout our 28 counties. They do collect all the providers, those 500 providers. They're required to have disaster response plans. I will say the ones that we are most concerned about are the providers that do residential services, where people are in these facilities that need to have, if a hurricane comes in, where do they need to go? So we oversee that process. And we do a map to readiness, which is on our website, that talks about before, during, and after a hurricane. Some project updates. Every year we do give out naloxone kits, and I think this year, didn't we give them to the health department? Yes. Health department got them this year in Beaufort County. We are going to be doing this new project that the state got. They gave us 6 mobile units, and they're going to be primarily doing substance abuse services in those mobile clinics. But I've also talked with a lot of folks in Beaufort County. You all, I think, have 3 different types of mobile clinics in your county that primarily deal with the physical health piece, but they deal with different pieces of that. So I've talked with Agape and Jim briefly, and to the hospital, and we're going to try to coordinate that. But I'm also wanting to put on your calendars that you'll get an invitation to the ribbon cutting, and that's April 19th. All of you will be invited April 19th at 11 o'clock at the Beaufort County Community College. And so we'll do the ribbon cutting there. We have had some legislators attend that in other counties, but we hope that you all can make that. We also have been focusing on tribal engagement, which is one of our requirements in the Taylor Plan, so I'm leading that effort also. Family navigators are going to also be a big part of how we address the individuals, so we're going to be making sure that people with lived experience can help us interact with folks that need services and supports. We do have a couple of counties that are doing a co-responder pilot, and that is a licensed clinician that knows the mental health stuff, either sitting in the sheriff's department or sitting in the DSS. And so that's not in every county, but we are trying to see how that works right now so that they can go out on calls with DSSs and law enforcement. The CFAC, Consumer Family Advisory Committee, the state has just taken on the responsibility of making sure that we have a representative with TBI, traumatic brain injury, that's on our CFAC, because that's another group that we have not represented in the past. And then the 200-bed facility in New Hanover County, there's a similar one in Raleigh, is supposed to open up in October, and that's at 100 beds for men, 100 beds for women for primary substance abuse issues. So now Beaufort County specific data. Total number of consumers served last year were 2,651. Those with a primary diagnosis were 2,055. Those with substance use were 669. And those with intellectual and developmental disabilities was 557. And I always say this, that doesn't add up to 2,651 because some of those folks are dually diagnosed. So, and that's all I have this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Dave? Well, you answered mine that I said, sorry. He's already answered the one that I had this afternoon.
Okay.
So Dave, don't mean to put you on the spot. Dave and I had a conversation this afternoon regarding some foster care decisions that the state is contemplating. And can you take just a couple of minutes and brief the board on that since you're here?
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you, Brian. So we understand that the state is going to be moving towards a statewide agency to manage the foster care system, okay? The two bidders that can put in for that are those 5 insurance companies that I mentioned to you and the 6 other LME MCOs. We are looking to have a letter of support because we would, and I'm not saying that we don't want to manage the entire state, but we would prefer just to manage the people that we manage right now and keep it local instead of statewide. And so we're looking for county managers and commissioners and folks to support that. We have a draft letter that I did send to Brian for your review. But we just think because of the local presence, instead of having one company manage the entire foster care system across the state, it may be better that way.
Brian?
So, Mr. Chairman, I did not, Dave and I talked, and I did not bring that letter forward for y'all as an agenda item simply because that's not appropriate the way we do our agenda. But I did want him to at least express that to you so you would know, because he's asking county managers if they would write a letter of support. So from my perspective, I would agree with Trillium's stance in that if you look at taking the entire state of North Carolina and taking all foster care and putting it under one organization. So someone in that organization is managing cases from Murphy to Manio. To me, it just sounds like a disaster in the making. So personally, and from my professional standpoint, I would support us saying we don't think that's a good idea. And I wanted to bounce that off the board so that I could write that letter and sign it in good conscience that I wasn't going against something that the board thought differently.
I have a question that goes to that.
Go ahead.
There was supposedly a study that was done by some high-powered group of people who have much more knowledge than us commoners. What are the supposed benefits of going to a state supervised program?
Thank you, Commissioner. So I won't be able to answer all of the benefits. I have heard from some folks that if it's one system, then there's an accountability in one place, okay, for that system. There's accountability in one place. There potentially, and I know the DSSs have DSS kids, foster kids, throughout the state.
Yes.
Okay? And so that might be another benefit to that. I will say, and this is just me saying this isn't Trillium saying this is Dave saying this, the closer to home, the better.
Well, along that line, this has, as we have heard in here, the elements of another disaster in the making, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have a bit of problem voting with a letter of support saying, don't do this. But I also think, in the interest of Beaufort County, we should take a look with the DSS, head of DSS, and talk with them. I think we should go to our legislators and ask to be exempted from this law. because this involves a lot of very, very personal things. It involves grandparents and parents and your children and my children. This thing gets really close to home. We don't need to be sending it to some bureaucrat in Raleigh. So I will make a motion that we write a letter saying that we don't think this is a good idea. It shouldn't be done. I also think within that motion, we have the statement in there, we don't have a problem supporting Trillium but going forward with this. And I would also think that we need to consult the Social Services Director with a request from our elected officials in Raleigh that Beaufort County be exempted from this legislation. And it may not go that way, but I just think having children close to home, I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second.
I mean, what was the motion? Make it again.
You think I can't repeat it, don't you?
No, I didn't hear it.
Well, where have you been?
Because you was up rambling off everybody about bureaucrats, and I forgot the motion. That's all you want to talk about was bureaucrats.
Well, you should pay. You're a commissioner. You should be paying attention to what's going on in here.
I don't want to hear that bull. You're talking about bureaucrats all the time.
Well, it is bureaucrats, and that's the whole problem. Why I'm opposed to this system is bureaucrats don't necessarily serve the public; they serve themselves. The motion is that we.
Get the mirror out.
The motion is that we support Trillium in their going forward for the bid. We don't have a problem with them. The motion also is that we think that this is a really bad idea, that it is not going to serve the public, and that we so notify our public officials. The motion is also, and I'm summarizing, please keep the original things that I said in the motion, not what I'm saying now.
Can't remember.
I can't remember all of it. That we consult the Social Services Director and have her come to a meeting maybe with us with the idea that get her input into this as not being a good idea, and to get her input into the petition to our elected officials in Raleigh that Beaufort County be exempted from this brilliant idea with all of these bureaucrats in it.
You're talking about at the state level.
The state level.
Where we do the whole state.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Dave, as you well know, most of the time during our planning sessions and budget, this comes up.
Yes.
And, we're in a position where we have to send people outside of Beaufort County.
Yes.
And they do go different places in the state, but hopefully, if it was done through somebody like Trillium, we could keep it within the 29 counties.
Yes. Yeah, and just I want to make sure when you put that motion in, you supported Trillium going for the statewide bid, but the proposal that I put in front of you was that we just keep it the same.
In my mind, that was in my motion.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have a question of Hood as it relates to the motion?
Find out if Randy's seconding this motion.
He did a good job to re-speak.
Okay.
Just so I can be clear on this, we're going to ask that we just use Trillium and their catchment area for this. We asked the state of North Carolina to review it and allow for a more regional approach to this conundrum which you're having to deal with, or we will have to deal with.
That's part of it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All right. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
You have a safe trip.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. COVID-19 report. Jim? And I was looking at the report this afternoon, and it looks very good.
You happy to see that?
Yes.
I hate to admit my age, that's all.
It'll tell on you.
That's bad. So, We are at 713 days since the first case in Beaufort County. So 2 years will be March 24th. Put it in perspective, it's been a long time. So I'm going to spare y'all with a bunch of graphs because I really want to get into talking about where we are, where we're going to be going in the future and stuff like that. So I'll just show you the trend that we're at right now, the up-to-date case count, 7-day average. And you can see that our big spike is back down to a less fearful number. And just looking at a few of the data points in this graph, you can see that we have about 324 active cases that I know of right now, which in our case count per day is right at 10. We were at 200 and something at that peak. 35% of the cases since January have been in the vaccinated, showing again that vaccine, you can still catch it if you have the vaccination. However, all the other stuff that I've showed you in the past shows that it does improve the probability of severity or lowering severity and hospitalization and deaths. And that most of the cases that we have been getting have been pretty mild, but we have had a few deaths that have occurred over the last 2 months, about 14 deaths or so. So I do want to talk about the next phase and thinking of the next phase and sharing this information and talking about what it's going to look like. I think I introduced the word endemic to y'all and then what it means that we're going from the epidemic phase to endemic, which means we have to learn to live with it. So as I talk through this next phase in epi terms is called an endemic phase. In emergency management terms, it's called demobilization. And in general terms, for most people, it's accepting the world that we live in now and the way it is. So I do have a series of points I want to share and talk over with you. I might repeat myself a couple of times in there to try to reinforce some of the thoughts. But before I get to those talking points, I wanted to make sure that you're clear on what the risk means. And it's very difficult to talk about that because I'm trying not to minimize the risk. I'm trying not to minimize the impact that COVID has, but putting it in perspective with the other things that we have around us, like heart disease and cancer, So life has risk with like heart disease and cancer, and then we learn to deal with that. We all have individual responsibilities, we all have community responsibilities, and we all try to minimize the impact that. If you have a fear of heart disease, then you do things to try to prevent heart disease. If you have worries about lung cancer, then you don't smoke and do some other things. So that we're trying to move the population towards that as well. One of the measurements that is used oftentimes is relative risk. So that's when you compare one group with another group. Usually the bottom group is your controls and the top group is whoever is exposed to whatever. And then you divide those two numbers, and if it's 1, that means there's no difference. So there's no impact. So when you look at lung cancer, death in lung cancer, or lung cancer in smokers versus lung cancer in non-smokers, that number is 11 to 17 times. So there's a strong association with smoking and lung cancer, and that's called relative risk. So I started putting together some of the relative risk numbers based off of age, and you can see the comparison group in this graph is 18 to 29. So the bottom number that I'm talking about with relative risk. And then wherever you see a 1 times, that means there's no difference. So if you look at cases across the board, age had no factor in whether you caught the disease or not. So everybody got it for whatever age, pretty equally across the board. But when you look at hospitalizations, you can see as the ages go up, it goes from 2 times to 4 times, 5 times, 8 times, 10 times. So when somebody is 85 years old or older, we're 10 times more likely to be hospitalized for COVID. So higher, 10 times relative risk. Then in death, you can see the age group associated with the relative risk, where if you're 85 years and older, you're 340 times more likely to die from COVID. So that's one of the big risk factors that when we start, and this is not new to y'all, but when I talk about risk groups, this is where it is. So if you're afraid of COVID, you should realize what age group you're in and how high a risk you have. So as you implement your own defenses. And then you've heard that condition of health has a lot to do with this as well. So if you had no conditions, that was 1. That's your base number on the bottom. If you have one condition, the top number, then you're 1.5 times more likely to in this case, die from COVID. So at 2 to 5 conditions, it's 2.6, a little over twice as likely to die from COVID as somebody that doesn't have a condition. 6 to 10 conditions, you're three times more likely to die. And if you are greater than 10, you're almost 4 times more likely to die from COVID. So those are the 2 biggest risk factors that is associated with COVID. So trying to move quickly into the starting points. These are some of the trends that we're seeing. Trends are going down. Like we talked about at the beginning, we're down to 10 per day, and that's true across the state, across the United States. Vaccines and boosters are now widely available to help. Am I right one? Yeah. Treatment is available to those who are at high risk for severe disease. Much of the public now has immunity. Variants have become less virulent, which means they're less dangerous. I also wanted to mention that in 2021, prior to 2021, halfway last year, COVID was the 3rd leading cause of death in North Carolina. However, that number has gotten down now. When you think about the risk factors going down, and now it is behind diabetes, accidents, and stroke. So those risks in life have become, COVID numbers have gone down to those levels. Was that clear? So it's much less of a risk now than it was 6 months ago, a year ago. Also, you're seeing countries have removed all mandates. The CDC and the state have started to put out new guidances that are coming out. And some venues now are no longer requiring proof of vaccination or test. So it was about 6 months ago, if you wanted to go to a concert or something like that, you had to show proof of a negative test or get tested there or something like that, or been vaccinated. There's a lot of venues that are no longer requiring that. And then, of course, home testing has become much more proliferant in our communities for people to use, and it has a major impact on most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about after this. So talking about testing, the decline has really gone down a lot for testing. We're averaging, at the health department site, we're only averaging 6 tests a day at this point. The site out at Hackney is averaging right at 8 or 9 a day. So the tests across the county has started going down. Most of the tests that are being done right now are usually in the doctor's offices where somebody's sick going into the doctor's office. Because of that, also I was going to say mass testing is likely to go away or become less available. So the site at Hackney, the health department, those are considered your mass testing sites. You also have sites in Greenville that are like that. If you drive through most every town or something like that, you'll probably see signs where they do mass testing. Most of that will probably be going away. It probably will be one of the last things that goes away, but it should be changing over the next 3 months to 6 months or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to close down the one at the health department and move it over to the Hackney site as for all operations. So instead of doing 6 and 8, they'll all do the 14 or 15 or we'll also be looking at how to distribute some testing kits. We don't have a whole bunch of testing kits that we've gotten, but we've oftentimes identified like Aurora as a rough place to get test kits. So I'm thinking about giving the town of Aurora some test kits so that their population will be able to access tests, because it's harder for them to come here to Hackney or something like that. You might do the same to Pinetown. Now, if I get more test kits coming in, I'll probably be able to do more for the rest of the community. But as of right now, if you live in this area, you can come to those sites. If you live in Aurora, it'll be easier for you to get a test kit from there. So test is done for diagnostic reasons or screening. Diagnostic means they're sick. Pretty much you're sick, and so the doctor needs to know whether they treat you or not. And then screening is we just want to know if you have the virus in you or testing for it. So you'll see a lot of screening at an event, going into something. A lot of places require you to do a test every week or something like that. I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot more of the diagnostic and a lot less of the screening tests moving forward. However, some places are still going to be very vigilant in what they're looking for. A long-term care facility is going to be doing a lot more testing than Iconic would be or something like that, So testing leads to case investigation and contact tracing. Case investigation that's when we call somebody that's positive and we try to figure out, when they got sick and, some demographic information. And then we try to get their contacts, and then we call the contacts. So contact investigation and contact tracing leads to isolation and quarantine. So if you're positive, we call you, we're going to put you on isolation. If you're a contact of that person, then we put you on quarantine. That's how everything was done up until December timeframe, where we went away from contact tracing for everybody. We went to school and high-risk people. Then last month we're no longer doing case investigation and contact tracing. Where the education comes in is at the site of the test. So if you go to a doctor's office and you test and you're positive, when they call you to let you know that you're positive, because they are required by law to give you your lab results, that's when they're going to do the education part to talk about isolation. They'll talk about quarantining and how you reach out to your contacts and let them know. So that's where that will occur. If you're positive, you're free to call the health department for any kind of advice. You're always welcome to call, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it. Isolation and quarantine is still a recommendation from the state, so it's a guidance. So if you know you're positive, you're supposed to be isolated. If you know you're a close contact, you're supposed to be quarantined. It's just very hard and impossible the way things are right now for us to be able to, as a health department, to do anything for everybody. It also has, the biggest reason that we did this was to try to cut down our community spread. We're no longer able to do that with this method. So we will continue to do case investigation and contact tracing if it's unusual circumstances. If it occurs in a long-term care facility, or if we see it going on in a school or classroom area, they ask us to come in and do it. If it's a business or something like that, we would still use it as a tool, but it'll be to try to cut down on that particular outbreak in that area. Vaccine operations. So again, vaccine demand is pretty low. I think we're averaging about 20 people starting the vaccine per week at this point. However, this is one of those things that I will be advocating. The health department will be advocating. This is the best interaction that we have against COVID is the vaccination and staying up with the boosters. I've showed y'all before statistics and looking at data that shows how I do believe that the vaccine works. So I'm not going to go through all that, but right now the vaccine.
I know you're going to get there, but since we're right at this point right now, what is the vaccination success rate? For lack of a better phrase, in the past, they said the vaccination would be 90% effective, 94% effective. What are we at now?
I think they call it vaccine effective. God, I knew the word a second ago. Efficacy.
Efficacy. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that originally, most of the tests that were done on this is done before the Omicron. So I can't tell you since the Omicron. I can tell you before the Omicron, they were looking at about 73%.
73?
Right.
And it's probably got kicked pretty hard since Omicron.
Right. It's probably gone down because of that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right.
So basically, you get the vaccine, 43% chance you're never going to get it, and if you do get it, you'll probably not have as harsh a case. Is that this?
Well, I don't know about the numbers that you use, but yes, I think if you got the vaccine, you're much less likely to get the virus, and if you do get the virus, you're much less likely to be sick or severe.
You've given a few opinions tonight.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. Considering that the vaccine is not as effective as they thought it would be, do you think they're ever going to end the vaccine mandates coming from the federal government as a control method?
You know what? I'm not even sure if the mandates are even in place right now. I know they were on hold there for a while from the OSHA ones. I'm not sure about the HHS one, DHHS one, if that mandate is still in place.
Are you getting any real good information?
I haven't gotten any information about the mandate since probably late December or January. So that's how quiet it's gotten.
It's gotten, but it was very important. I mean, we've had a lot of protests. I mean, the truckers in Canada, truckers in
well, now Canada, I think, still has that mandate.
But it's still the same thing. I mean, the mandates still are somewhat of an imposition to a lot of people because the administration has not been clear. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world today, and I was watching the presser, and one of the big issues for their press secretary was again COVID. It's a big issue for them, and with gas at $5 a gallon in a lot of places, $4.19 here in Beaufort County. So I'm just wondering, we're at the political stage still, or are we at the science stage with the CDC?
It feels like a loaded question there. I don't know. I'm not even sure I know how to answer it.
It's a very good question because this is the distinct reality we live under.
Well, I don't live at the federal level. My job, you know what I mean. So I'm not really.
I mean, my thing is, Omicron was going really strong, and then there was a lot of polls taken, and they were not very good for this edification of a president. Right. And all of a sudden it started going away. I mean, we're going to start eliminating things. No. The politics of COVID has been slowly sloughing off.
Well, I stay away from politics.
I know, but this is a very political issue for America.
But I think there's that starting points I listed were all the reasons why I think we're moving towards this. So some of them may be politically backed, or I don't know, but I think those were by themselves stand as a testimony as to why we're moving that way forward and why I agree with us moving that way forward. I've said before, I don't mandate the vaccine for anybody. I just provide it if.
And I appreciate it, and I think you have a good opinion on everyone should be vaccinated if they feel so inclined to be so.
I think it's the best way to protect yourself from the risk of dying or having a serious hospitalization because of COVID. I do agree with that. So the vaccine is available through the health department still. Most of your medical clinics, including Vita and Agape, have vaccine availability. Pharmacies, like the local ones like O'Neill's has it, and your chains, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, they all have the vaccine available. So with that in mind, the health department will be moving from the outside system that we've had in place for all this time. Let's see if I can remember the dates here. Well, I think I forgot to bring the sheet with you, but we already moved the boosters inside. So if you want to get a booster shot, now you call the health department, you schedule it just like you would if it was a tetanus shot, just like if it was a hepatitis shot. Then on the 22nd of March, we will be moving the first, second, and immunocompromised shots into the health clinic as well. So it'll become just another shot that you get through the health department. Like I said, like anything else with flu shots. Now, if there's a booster effort that comes out, we'll probably ramp it back up for that reason. But for right now, where we're at with the demand, I think we're okay with that. So, this is just one of those graphs to show how effective the vaccine is. Yes, you can still get COVID, you can still be hospitalized, you can still be in ICU, but the rates are much lower for those who have been vaccinated. And considering the fact that 75% of North Carolinians have been vaccinated, it really tells me that it's effective. And I'm going to get back to my stuff here. So, just the numbers to really pay attention to is the 95 and older, or I'm sorry, the 65 and older is at 91% coverage. I mean, I'd like it to be at 98% or better, but it is what it is. I don't think that number's going to go up. We only had about 4 started last week. And the adult population as a whole at 64.2%. So those are the numbers that I really want to see, because those risk factors I showed you before all fall up into those areas. I think Frankie pointed this out to me once before. When are we going to change to the 2020 census numbers? Because that would actually improve all of these numbers. But I want to keep it at least jibing with the dashboard at the state level, and they still use these numbers, so that's why I had done it. So another thing that we're going to have to really start working on, start working on, we've been working on it, but that will be a point of emphasis, will be public education. So just like one of the things that we need to do is convey to the people that just like any other diseases in our world, we have to learn to understand it and to live with the risk. That's true not just for viruses, but also for other, issues, wearing seatbelts and stuff like that. So again, I'm not trying to minimize COVID. I'm trying to do is the fact that we have to bring it down to living with it, just like we do with skin cancers and we live with other conditions, the flu, those kind of things. But I do recognize there are some people in the community that are still very afraid, and some people are so afraid of skin cancer that they wear hats and stuff all over, long sleeve shirts. They never go outside. And that's kind of the same thing. If you're afraid of the COVID, you're going to have to do these prevention things. Getting vaccinated, being cognizant if you don't go around a bunch of sick people. You have to weigh what you're doing to the probability of catching it. Right now we are low numbers, so it's a lot harder for you to come in contact with it. If you see that we're going back up, then that's when you probably want to bring more precaution into your life. So, but I can say that with the flu. If you are, older and have those multiple conditions, the flu can have the same impact.
Can I ask a question of you, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Are you hearing anything coming down from either division of the CDC or even from the state of North Carolina about the mental health crisis that has arisen from the COVID scare that was foisted upon the United States people?
There has been a drastic increase in behavioral health needs, and especially with anxiety and depression. Is that at some point going to step to the fore as a real issue, or is the scare tactics, you think, going to continue? It's a problem, and the health department will try to address it. I don't know about the scare tactics.
Well, they've been very apparent and real. But it's important that we move on to the mental health crisis that has arisen, because I think we all know somebody that is becoming agoraphobic or cannot handle this whole pandemic issue, where you being afraid. I mean, I think it's Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said the greatest fear is fear itself. That's the only thing we have to fear. I'm paraphrasing. And I think the problem we have now is so many people are so afraid they can't think straight when it comes to functioning in a society which is maskless and vaccination free, possibly at some point. And that they may just want to become a disabled person because of that and never have to work again. And I don't know if society's going to be able to handle that.
I can tell you what, we at the health department, we recently received a grant for the Behavioral Health Task Force to address behavioral health and substance use issues in our county. So you will see more, not necessarily just COVID related, but just in general for the issues that we have in the county along behavioral health and substance use worries. I think y'all remember me giving y'all, I asked y'all for that grant, or not, budget adjustment amendment. Okay. Let's see. So high-risk communities are going to have more focus from the health, from the education and the health department side. Illness management is going to be something that we're going to have to educate people on, where to get the treatment, where to, what to do if you're sick, all that kind of stuff. So these are a lot of things that we're going to really target. We're going to send out a bunch of videos, little videos about this, so that we can educate the county on these factors. You know, mask is now, the guidance from the state is mask is not required anywhere. That doesn't mean that a person doesn't have the right to use one if they want one. And also think about requirements of venue and travel, because even though we may not have any kind of guidance or requirements here, if you want to go to another country, that country may have some requirements. So y'all think about that. Modes of transportation like planes may still have requirements. You may go to a concert where they still have a requirement. So just be aware that it can be true. And then also availability resources. The biggest one I'm thinking of is if we can try to get more home test kits in the county to provide that service. So if you're an individual, this is the education piece that we're talking about. If you're an individual, you need to stay up to date with your vaccines. That's the health department message. Stay up to date with your boosters. Also, consider getting tested if you have symptoms or have been exposed to somebody. We prefer you to get tested, but what we have found out is a lot of people don't test. They're sick, they're sick. And they don't know if they have COVID or not. I would just say that if you're sick and you don't get tested, stay home. Preferably stay home for the 5 days, okay? And also talk to your contacts, especially if they're home, in the same home, and tell them to be quarantined for a while. If you are at risk, those risk factors I showed you before, then you need to notify and talk to your doctor as soon as you can so that they can consider a treatment for you. Treatment doesn't do any good if you've already had it for more than 5 days. So if you have symptoms and you test positive with the home kit or whatever, then get to your doctor so that especially if you are high risk for severity. And if you want, you can wear a mask as added layer of protection. Health department, we will say that the best protection is going to be N95 for you, okay, or KN95. And if you have COVID and you've gone past your 5 days, it'd be nice for you to wear some protection for 5 days, just to make sure that if you cough and steal, that you're not going to potentially spread anything else as well. So that's what we're going to be saying now from this point forward on individuals. At the high-risk settings, we're going to, again, vaccines very important. Provide tests to the staff and to the clients there. And then connect them to treatment and the other CDC guidance. Now, surveillance, all the reports that we've been sending out. At this point, I mentioned this at the last meeting, the case counts are not as precise as they could be, because all we're getting is the tests that come from the testing sites. A lot of people test at home positive, they don't tell us about it. People that don't get tested when they're sick. So it used to be an estimate that for every case that we had reported, we probably had 3 cases out there that we didn't know about. I don't know what that number is now, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's 7 or 10 for every case that we have. And that also means that positivity rates is not going to be very reflective of or accurate, in the sense that most people that go to get, a lot of people that go to your test sites now tested at home were positive, so they go there. So we already know they're going to be positive when they come there. So it's it skews the numbers. And then that at-home testing influence I was telling you about earlier. So some of the changes, the CDC has changed the way they're doing their community level, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. But that change is very drastic from the CDC level, where it was very easy for you to be a high community level transmission occurring. Now it takes a lot more cases in an area to be called high community level of transmission. The state has also come out with new guidances. As y'all know, the governor put out about the mask, and today was the first day for a lot of those new guidances to come into place. And the state is going to be updating their information weekly now instead of daily. So these are all signs that they're changing, moving away from the norm. This is the new system, and I'll try to get quickly. I've probably been up here way too long for y'all, but the state has gone to this method now for low, medium, and high indications, and the problem is that they're using hospital administrations as part of this, and not county that the person is hospitalized from. So if Hyde County person is sick, they come to Beaufort County Hospital, that counts as our numbers. If it's Martin County does it. So I think this number is okay to follow as a trend, but I wouldn't use this specifically for all my decisions. But this is what we look like as of the 3rd. You can see that we are orange and the one of the higher ones. It makes no sense to me why Pamlico would be green, we would be orange, Craven would be yellow. We all are right next to each other. So I'm just saying, even though it's something to look at, it's not the only thing. So these are the processes that I'll be using to kind of make judgment calls for the public information moving forward. I am going to stop the EM reports that are coming out daily. I think we're going to get rid of them totally. I'll still maintain the websites for the graphs and stuff like that up until the summertime. Eventually I'll move that to a yearly or semi-yearly review to the Board of Health. And I will continue to be monitoring so I can give y'all information to make calls and judgments on. That being said, see, I made this one long, so maybe y'all would say y'all don't want me to come back next month or something. But my question is, do you think y'all need this monthly, or do you think we can move it to quarterly, or do you want to maintain it monthly for a while? I mean,
I said the numbers would change. You would have to come back as long as it's trending like it is now. I don't see a problem with having it.
the will of the board.
Hi, Chairman. Yes. I'd like for you to keep coming back, and I'll tell you why. There's a lot of people out there who feel like this is a huge problem still because, again, I'm talking about they were frightened to death, and the mental health aspects of being reassured by you, and you've given a lot of great information. I appreciate that. But I will tell you this, just 3 to 4 weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C. at a conference, and they had mask monitors. If you didn't have a mask on, they would come and talk to you. Now, I wore my mask until I started eating and drinking. I found that if I drank and ate at a very slow rate, I wouldn't have to wear that mask. But if I did go to a restaurant, I had to show proof of vaccination. To get in the conference, I had to show proof of vaccination. To get in the hotel, I had to show proof of vaccination. When I watched the president come out, to do this speech, and there was nobody around him, he had a mask on. When he left, he forgot to put it on again. But it's what we have is two different worlds. You have the CDC with the political end, which is very important for them, and then you have the science side, which I think might be stepping to the fore and getting equal with the political side of the CDC. I'm not sure of that yet, but I think so people in Beaufort County will be reassured and have a better understanding of how things are really trending. I think it'd be good for you to come back. And if you can give those reassuring words again that all is well, where the mask mandates, where you can't go to work anymore, and you can't do this, you can't do that, can't go outside. Maybe they'll feel freer to go outside and live their life again, and kind of shake off that authoritarian control that has been so important for the last 2 years.
Well, I don't mind coming and entertaining you.
Thank you,
Stan.
No,
Well, I've got a different perspective, Langley.
I think it'd be better if you came quarterly. But if this board wants you to come monthly, I say condense it.
Well, this is just the one time where there's a lot of changes that are going on, and I hope I hadn't been too long in the past.
I mean, the things that we say over and over again, if there's really no change in them, I really don't see a need to repeat those.
Gotcha. Do the will of the board. That's whatever y'all want.
I'm okay with a printout. I mean, what your information is great. It really is. But if there's no changes, like Commissioner Booth said, then a printout's fine.
Now, it's a virus, so there will be changes, but if it's drastic, I'll get to you. Yeah.
How about if we leave it between you and the county manager that when you feel like it's appropriate to come back and give us an update? I'm not interested in sitting here and hearing a big political speech about what's going on in Washington, D.C. and other places.
The problem, Jim, is that we allocated 10 minutes.
I'm sorry.
We took 35.
Well, he didn't take 35. Let's make that clear.
No, it's we.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is an important issue. You can make light of it if you want to. I don't have a problem with having a report every month, and I want to hear what's going on in Washington, D.C. I'm a pretty broad-minded commissioner. I can handle more than one thing at a time. Okay?
Yeah, we
understand. I think you could give us a minimal report that maybe you wouldn't have to appear. You just submit something for the agenda and say, I don't think it's necessary. Here's such and such. 1 or 2 pages. That might solve the problem for everybody.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get it? It's clear. You got it.
I'll watch a video.
You want to go to your next item?
I've got a quick question. Okay. What's the shelf life of the vaccine? Do you, when it goes bad, do you send it back, or do you dispose of it here?
Dispose of it here, but sometimes it'll get an extension of that shelf life.
And how long does it last?
Well, I don't know the answer to that specifically. I know we haven't had any go.
Oh, so you haven't disposed any yet?
Well, I don't want to say that without talking to my immunization nurse.
All right. And you have a place to keep an ample supply?
We do.
Your next item.
Sorry, I'm getting out of here quick. All right, so we are asking then for this mobile trailer. When we were originally looking at this, we were told that the CDC would not approve trailers. However, the state came back to us later and said, yes, they will pay for it. So we investigated a bunch of different ones, and this is the one we fell on. It is the Cadillac of trailers, but it's all CDC money that's going into it, not county dollars. So it's nice for us to be able to use that to go to different locations. My guess is this will end up being used not just for COVID, but for other things that the health department will be doing in the future.
Jim, I understand it. I understand the CDC is going to pay for it, and that's fine. I'm glad they are. But who paid for the vehicle to tow it? Do you already have?
Oh, we already have them.
Okay, that's what I need.
I checked beforehand to make sure that we could tow it with what we have.
That's what the tow package is already on the other.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Even though the CDC's paying for it, will the county have its own, like the county logo and
yes,
color?
It's going to have it. We call it the health department skin. Yeah.
Okay.
This was the only one they had right now.
Good. How many other trailers do you have?
We don't have anything that could be used as a examiner.
No. How many other trailers do you have?
2.
2 other trailers. Look, I'm not going to vote for this. This is $190,000. That's the big secret these guys have been keeping from you. And yes, it's purchased with free money. They're giving you the money. It's free. But what you need to look at is staffing this thing and all the projects that are going to be out there and the maintenance and the repair and the upkeep and on it goes. This is another example. And the thing, the guy just told you COVID is over with, but we're buying a COVID trailer. Well, isn't there something wrong in there? You can argue that it can be used for other things, but I have a problem with the expansion and growth of government. It has been severe over the last 4 or 5 years. We put on more and more people, and we buy more and more trailers and more vehicles, and on it goes. This has to stop somewhere. Somebody gives you an elephant. It's not free. You got to feed it. You've got an expense. So I'm not voting for this. This is another example of government getting too big and a toy that's free, and so we have to buy it. No, I'm not voting for it.
Well, Jim, I'm going to vote.
I'll entertain a motion. Let's
move.
Okay, we got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, nay. Discussion.
Well, Jim, I'll just tell you that as long as they bring that money here, it's free money. If we don't take it, somebody else will, and we'll still be paying for it. So go after it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I agree with Hood on this. It's my greatest desire. We have a huge red wave. We can roll back a lot of this spending. that has caused our inflation to reach 10%, and it's causing gas to go up to $4.19 per gallon here in Beaufort County. We are directionless at the federal level. Just because it's free doesn't mean that it's right. This is still our money. CDC said, don't do it. Okay, now do it. It's the political side of the CDC or the science side of the CDC. We never know who's going to show up. Now, Jim, I appreciate you. You're doing a great job. And I hate to take away a tool, but we're still hearing that now, because the politics are bad, all of a sudden in the last month, that, hey, we're beating it. We've beaten it. Now, I don't know who to believe or what to believe. So my idea about proper governing is stop spending money when we don't know what to do. Somebody else can have the money. I don't care at this point.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the purchase, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Thank you.
I got something to say before we go. Very briefly. Jim, I noticed you have been congratulated enough, and I still think that we should put this on this film that Jim and his staff got an award at Chamber Banquet last week. It was very, very disturbing, and y'all done a remarkable job during this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, y'all.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. And we're back, and Lloyd, you're going to give us the dates for the 22 Board of Equalization and Review.
So just to explain real quick, we had, as of last year, we'd started doing one in the fall for personal property. I would like to continue that again this year, but I'm not here for those dates. So I'm here for the real property Board of Equalization review dates. We do this every year. I believe we did it last year. I'm only giving you all kind of a small selection this year because the week before it's actually Easter. So what we had on for tentative would be the 25th and 26th with a backup date of the 27th. And I do realize that's a Wednesday, but it's only a backup date in case something does happen.
Motion to approve. We've got a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Thank you very much, Lloyd.
Thank y'all.
All right. We're down to the public hearing. Need a motion for us to go into the public hearing on Project Oak. So moved. Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to go into the public hearing. So at this time, I'll ask, is there anybody here for public comment? We did not have anyone sign up.
Motion to come out of public comment.
Okay, got a motion to come out and a second. All right, Public Oak Economic Development Initiative, Martin.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioners. I outlined previously last month what Project Oak was about, so I'm not going to go through all that again. But I've been working, and the staff have been working, and the attorney and county manager and the county assessor to work on this project to get it into a format that you could vote on it. And I'm glad to say tonight that Project Oak, the North Carolina Department of Commerce, and the city have all agreed to our requests on what we wish them to do. Those requests included that Project Oak has agreed to consider the investment of $4.5 million and create the 50 jobs at an average salary of $40,250. Has agreed to the situation to return the land if the project does not go ahead. Has agreed to refund the cost of the land proportionate to the investment not made and the jobs created, and agreed to pay any administrative fees associated with the North Carolina Outstanding Building Renovation Grant. On their part, the North Carolina Department of Commerce has agreed to extend the Building Renovation Grant to Project Acorn for 2 years, and has agreed to use the Project Oak jobs to achieve Project Acorn's job goals. From the latest Mideast Commission's numbers, this is likely to be about 11 of the 50 jobs of Project Oak. The City of Washington has also agreed to request Beaufort County to act as the agent for the city in the paperwork involved in the granting of the land to Project Oak. All these agreements obviously have to be put into contractual form, and necessary signatures are received But at this stage, the project looks very sound and secure from, I think, the county's point of view. So at this point, I'd like to ask the commissioners to vote to that the company be allowed to sign the necessary documents, and that the final versions be drawn up by the county manager, county attorney, county assessor, and myself, and that you approve the granting of land to Project O, plus the outstanding building renovation grant be included in the jobs totals.
Motion to approve. Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
The return of the land is, if they don't start the project within 2 years, they're going to return the land.
Yeah, within 3, but yes.
Within 3 years? Which lot out there are we talking about?
It's the one between IMT and Oak Ridge Industries.
Oak Ridge is all the way on the end on Cherry Run Road?
Yes, it's on the left as you go around the corner.
Yeah, okay, all right. And the original project for rehabilitating that building, that's the building that's on Cherry Run Road, right?
That is the Oak Ridge Industries building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they've been in that building, they're manufacturing stuff in that building, so what is the problem with the rehab grant?
They expanded the building actually it was about 7 years ago now, and through various economic and other calamities and workforce, they haven't been able to achieve their goals. So we've gradually extended it. And
So you extended it because they couldn't have enough employees?
Right. Yeah.
Now, Oak Ridge, is that an independent company, independent of the companies that are already here manufacturing filter devices, or are they a part of them?
They are part of an existing company in the county? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
They are a part of an existing company in the county?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm having trouble trying to figure out what's going on and why things are going so slow in this particular case.
It's moved relatively quickly. There have been some, as I've outlined here, some twists and turns that we've had to organize between the company and the Department of Commerce. So once this is voted on, I think we'll move forward very quickly.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
On the bottom of, I don't know what page it is, bottom of the
286.
Yeah. I don't know if, it says Project Oak currently has an outstanding building renovation reuse grant in the amount of $203,000, for which the company has to create 21,000 jobs at $9,600 apiece.
That would be the repayment of the grant. That's 21 into $203,000.
Okay.
That's how much each job is worth if they don't create all the jobs.
That's
okay.
That's all
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of Project Oak, raise your right hand. Those opposed?
Thank you.
6-1.
Thank you. And this will actually be my last county commission meeting here in Beaufort County. So I'd like to thank you all for the privilege of allowing me to do this job for the last 7.5 years. I hope you feel you've got your value out of me, and I certainly have out of the county. I've enjoyed my time here tremendously and made a lot of friends, and it was a hard decision, but my son lives on the West Coast, and I'm going to follow him out there. So thank you very much.
Well, Martin, I think the first trip you and I took was to the Voice of America site.
Yes.
And you rode me around, and we went inside the building into the bunker.
Yeah.
But we thank you for your service, and we wish you the very best when you get on the West Coast. And I know it's a family decision, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
Pardon?
I said I think they need his help.
Yeah, and we think the West Coast probably needs your help.
Thanks.
Okay. Christina, would you like for us to take that budget amendment first?
Yes, sir.
All right. Go back to page 8. That was the one that Commissioner Richardson pulled. And what is your question?
Well, do I understand that this is a program that would operate essentially like an app that a customer of the Beaufort County water system could get on and figure out how to manage their water bill?
Yes. But it's clarification about how to manage their water bill. What it would allow customers that choose to could go in and set it up so that they would have a username and they would have access to their usage, so that they would be able to see what did I use last May, how much am I using, what's the rate that I'm using, and that type of thing. So they're able to go in and set up alarms that says if I use above a certain amount of water, then they would be notified. So our current customer service reps currently do that, but it's you have to set a pretty large number, because you could have customers where there's one person that lives in the household, or you could have customers where there's 6 people that live in the household. Obviously, their water usage varies greatly. So we do not have the ability to go in and to set the parameters for the notifications based on that, but an individual person would have the ability to do that. For instance, my previous neighbor was a widow who lived alone in her home. So the number that our customer service reps contact customers and notify them that you need to go and take a look at your pipes. We're seeing a larger amount of usage than what is typical or what is normal. To go and check, and they do that on a weekly basis. But for instance, Ms. Cox, she was a widow, so that she was having extremely high usage, but it would not have been high usage for a family of 4, but it was high usage for her. So therefore, she was not given that notification. And when her daughter called, that was a question that she asked. I thought that you guys were notifying people if they had a large or an unusual or using an unusual amount of water, and that's why it was not done. So people would be able to go in and set that alarm for them.
The average water bill in Beaufort County is what, $35 a month?
Probably a little higher, between 35 to 40.
How many people do you think are going to sit up nights and worry about their water usage?
I hope none, because I hope that they will go to the program and set this up so that they receive an email so that they don't have to set up. Because if they set up the account, you go in there one time, you set it up for your account, and you set up what the parameter you would like for it to be, and then you would receive the notification quicker. For us, our reports are run, I'm not sure if they're run once or twice a week, and then the customer service reps have to do it, so there is a multi-day delay before someone will be notified of usage. So, that can be a very expensive leak.
Yeah,
we have write-offs constantly about this.
This is an incredible, we've got a write-off policy that we follow, though, haven't we?
Absolutely.
You can only write off once, whatever, 3 or 4 years
3
or something?
years. Yes, sir.
Okay. This is a problem that is solved. It looks to me like we're beating a dead horse and providing an unusually high level of service that is only going to serve just a very, very few people at a cost of $15,000 a year, and that would be a recurring cost, if I understand it.
It would be a cost of $2.75 per person per year.
Yes.
After the initial cost.
But okay, let's think about this for a minute. We got a $35 water bill or a $38 water bill. $2.75 is about 7 or 8% of the cost of their water. The economics do not justify this, and the level of service is an incredibly high level of service that I just don't think the county should be providing. You can look at your water bill from one month to the next. In most places, you can look in the yard and see the water ponding out there if you've got a line break. Now, the line behind the meter, between the meter and the house, belongs to the customer.
Yes, sir.
Here we are taking on more customers' responsibilities. This is like government. We're going to do more and more and more for you. I can't support this because it's a waste of money and it's a level of service that we don't need to provide, and the people that have maintained new water systems, they get nothing out of this. But it's an expense on the county residents. I'm not going to vote for it.
Well, it can be an excellent tool for someone who has a home here and lives in Raleigh or Dallas, Texas, or some other part of the country that's not here during the winter months, because they can put an alert on there, and at the end of the day, they can find out if they've got a water leak, a major water leak. And we've got a lot of people in this county that have piers, and they have water out at the very end, and during the winter months, it's very easy for them to freeze, and nobody knows about it unless they have something like the alert. It's just like setting your MasterCard. It's just more professional service with the system that we have. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this expenditure.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Didn't you say it was up to the individual whether they wanted it or not? It's not a mandatory thing.
Yes, sir. And this is a service, when the decision for the AMI meters, it's something that was been included. This is the final stage of the project, because we could not implement it until there was actually at least a 12-month history that people would have, so they would have something to reference.
And didn't you tell us that when we first put these new meters in, that this thing would have to have a 12-month period before we could do anything else? Didn't you tell us that prior to?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I'm presenting you the option at the pleasure of the board if we move forward.
And if anybody on our water that don't want to spend this $2.78 or whatever, $1.78, that's their choice. Is that correct?
Well, no, sir. That is included in our overhead, or our annual overhead for renewing the project. So these are the features that are currently available. I don't know what may be available in the future, but that would be the cost.
So the person still have a choice whether they do or do not want it.
Yes, sir. They have a choice whether to go in and to set up an account, just like they set up an account if they choose to make payments through a debit or a credit card. They would go in and set up another account so that only they would be able to view their usage. So it's a choice. As we've seen, as our customer base is changing, especially after COVID, many people are choosing to interact with the customer service agents and with the water department either via telephone or via phone apps, and we're just giving them that availability, that option, that choice.
Any other questions?
Yes. Look, you're going to pay the $2.75 whether you use the service or not, so it becomes a tax on the individual. Number two, people are responsible for their own water systems behind the meter. They can buy devices that will tell them if they have a high leakage rate or if a high amount of water is coming through their system. They can buy those things themselves and protect themselves. This is another great example of socialism at work. We're going to look after you. We're going to protect you. You're not going to have to do anything. Just keep paying us the money. It's an unnecessary expense, and it is definitely an unnecessary service. So, again, it's a waste of money. It's a throwaway. It's growing government and making government bigger.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Thank you, Christina. You're going to go to the grant funding.
Yes, sir. Asset and inventory and assessment grants were created by the Division of Water Infrastructure, which is a division of the Department of Environmental Quality, to encourage water and wastewater utilities to become more viable and more proactive in the management and financing of their systems. That's a mouthful. But again, the asset and inventory and assessment grants, for those of you that have been on the board for a few years, that may ring a bell to you. We applied for these grants back in 2016. However, we were not successful for it. Again, with the large amount of funding that is coming down from the federal government, the Division of Environmental Quality is encouraging systems to apply for these funds. Because of the smaller timeline, the applications are due on May the 2nd of 2022 for the spring funding round, so that's why I'm bringing that to you. I'm just asking for permission to apply for this grant funding. The asset inventory and assessment grants are exactly what they say. They give you funds to hire assistants to take an inventory of your current systems, to look at an age, a replacement, that type of thing, to give you additional information for your capital improvement plans. Some systems use it for their GIS locating of their facilities, which we have already done, so we would not utilize it for that. And also the assessment grants. I'll be honest with you, when I stand here right now, I'm not 100% sure of what would be the best use or the best application to present to the state, because we have a lot of different needs, but the amount of these grants are limited, so we want to ask for a project that we will be able to successfully complete with the grant funds that are given to us. Right now, what I'm leaning towards, if we receive approval for it, is it's called an AWIA Emergency Response Plan. That is the AWIA is the American Water Infrastructure Act, which was passed by the federal government, I believe last fiscal year, which has quite a few different requirements that water systems have to go through and fulfill, the first of which was updating, or not updating, but creating a new emergency response plan that was in compliance with the guidelines that the federal government gave us. So even though we had an existing emergency response plan, we had to go in and revise it due to the federal government requirements. One of the things that's in the AWIA response plan that they are really putting a lot of emphasis on is security. Security of the physical infrastructure sites, as well as security of any computer systems that are utilized for water treatment. So that is what I'm currently thinking that our grants will be angled towards, as far as what's the best means for us to provide additional security measures for our infrastructure.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve. Is there a second? Well, we have a second. Questions or comments, discussion? If none, all those in favor of the grant funding application, raise your right hand. Those opposed? 5-2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wes, you're going to talk to us about approval of professional services as it relates to solid waste.
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'll try to do my best to be as quick as possible. You may recall during the commissioner retreat back at the end of January, Mr. Vance Moore with Garrett and Moore came to give a presentation about solid waste mega sites planning. And at that point, the board asked Mr. Moore to prepare a proposal to proceed with the conceptual planning and everything regarding those sites. Again, one on the north side, one on the south side. This has been repeated many times. We attached the task order document from Garrett and Moore that details the required actions from conceptual planning all the way through the end of construction of 2 sites. That is what we asked them to provide, and that's what we attached for you all to review. Staff prefers, as a part of this agreement, to utilize the services of Garrett and Moore throughout the whole process instead of switching who we're using at certain points. Garrett and Moore makes a conceptual plan. Engineering firm number 2 comes in and does construction drawings, and then we get construction assistance from somebody else. We prefer to use one entity. It just helps continuity throughout the whole project. However, our recommendation is based on the fact that funding previously approved for this year's operating budget is available to cover task 1 through 3. If funding is available through other means, whether it's ARPA funds, general funds, etc., then our recommendation would be to approve funding through the completion of construction with Garrett and Moore. As I stated, no additional funding is required to approve task 1, conceptual site plan, task 2, site selection of 2 sites, and task 3, property acquisition assistance, which totals up to approximately $48,000, and there's approximately $50,000 available, or previously approved for engineering in the fiscal year 22 budget. Again, task orders 4 through 22 can be approved when a funding source is determined. So our recommendation is to approve task 1, 2, and 3 of the Garrett and Moore task order, unless you also otherwise choose.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. The only difference, if I understand it correctly, between the two sites is the one on the south side will have a separate fenced-in area for storm debris.
That's correct. That has been discussed, as well as possibly size difference. We anticipate more space for containers and offerings on the north side than we do the south
And
side.
Hawkins Beach will be used for storm debris on the north side.
That's correct.
Continue to be.
That's the plan.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
What's the total of all of these various jobs? I didn't see a total in this thing.
The total is, if you look on the spreadsheet that was provided at the end, this is
525,000.
Yes, this is Garrett and Moore and all subconsultants that they would need to employ for.
Now, each of the items in this agree, is this a contract or is this an agreement?
We're technically titling it an agreement. I mean, if we sign it, we're contracted with them.
Each item within the agreement would come to the commissioners for approval before going forward.
If that's how you all wish to proceed.
That's the way I would want to do it.
And we would, I can see us doing like this, where we would lump certain tasks together instead of task by task.
Right. Yeah. Okay?
So if we agree upon this, we have an agreement in principle to go forward with these people, yet they will bring back specific parts and components of this agreement. As we find out what we need, we may want to change. We'll be able to do that, providing we all, as commissioners, agree to it. Am I right?
That's correct. And what I'm sensing you asking is you'll receive a conceptual plan before you want them to proceed with property acquisition.
And there's a lot of tentative things. We may decide to do some things differently in between here and there as we discover better ways to do what needs to be done. We may have questions.
That's correct. And one other thing I do want to mention is in developing the proposal, Mr. Moore and his firm had to make several assumptions regarding their pricing. So as things change throughout the process, some of these prices could change, incrementally.
His consultant fee can't change, can it?
It's all based on the tasks.
I mean, that's the part that I mean, I know when you start to digging and probing, you don't ever know what you're gonna run into. But once you take the job for a certain amount of money, I think that's where we want to be. I mean, it's not nothing that he can come in and say. I mean, it's a gentleman's agreement that I didn't charge you enough that he could change it. Do you have that in there?
Just for, I'm looking for a specific example here, but just like site selection, the engineer will help. He'll provide top 3 choices on north side and south side. If one of those choices doesn't work out and he has to go to a 4th or 5th option, then there might be additional costs that would come with those changes.
Well, Commissioner, I think it's to our advantage to have this as an agreement.
Yeah.
Then you come back and you ask for specific funding for each part of it, and then you present what you're doing, and you get a chance to control those costs. But if you make it into a contract, it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, the reason I was asking that when he brought it up that these things could change, and I understand they could change. You could go get a site that we can't use. I understand that part. But I was wondering if I was a consultant, he come in and say, I didn't charge you enough for doing it. But if he gonna come back and present all that to us, I don't have a problem with it. Fine with it.
Well, I can tell you this, from a budget standpoint, I do a lot of this kind of work. These numbers are all very high. So I don't think you have to worry about coming back and asking for more money.
Any other?
Yeah, I've got something to say. I think it's going to be incumbent upon the commissioners to lend direction to the consultant and let him know what we want, and continually let him know what we want, as that may change as we go forward. So, we can't let him go out there blind. He has to have direction, and that will keep our costs down. Don't you think, Hood?
Yeah, well, he's very knowledgeable of our system. He's already shown us that in front of us, so, he knows what he's doing, and I don't have any problem with doing this the way we're doing it.
I mean, the way I read the first 3 phases, we're going to have a chance to have input. He's coming back to us with like 3 locations.
Right. And you'll see conceptual plans. He was showing us the other day on a Teams chat where they've got 3D graphic models of a collection site they've designed for right outside of Aberdeen. So you're going to see things presented. You'll have the opportunity to make comments and suggestions, and it won't be something where he's going to hide these and we'll proceed without anybody knowing about them. So
he's going to be presenting models, but not sites to begin with, right?
Right. First task is conceptual planning.
Okay, good.
Okay. Any other, John?
How does this fit into our purchase policy? I'm fully supportive of what we're doing, but
It's a professional service.
yeah.
It's exempt because it's a
Okay.
service.
You guys good? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to go to your next item?
Yes, sir, certainly.
Well,
Commissioner Dethridge requested a update on the solid waste ordinance update that we're currently working on. We have completed a draft copy of our proposed ordinance, and we have sent that to the county attorney, Public Services Management, and Mr. Moore for review and comment. We felt that having all the different parties associated with what's going on take a first look at it before we present it to the board as a whole. And that was part of Mr. Moore's first task with us, is helping us with the ordinance. So that's why he's included on that as well. Some of the objectives of this ordinance I think I hit on last time we talked about it. Clarifying the annual fee definition and details regarding how that is assessed. The ordinance will address storage, collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste. It will address use of our account at the Republic Services Transfer Station, who is billed to our county account, and what regulations they need to follow, as well as penalties for littering, illegal dumping and burning, scavenging, and other items that are deemed necessary for moving forward as well. During your February meeting, there was discussion regarding littering, and what we did is we included just a snapshot of some of the language we've put in the draft regarding that topic. You can see there are items in there talking about accumulating solid waste on your property, dumping along a street or a highway, and talks about storage of waste being covered, transportation being covered properly, or we've also added strapped properly because there's some that you wouldn't cover. And then talking about leaving waste at a solid waste site that's closed, because we've had instances of that as well. So items like that are included, and that is, like I said, a very brief snapshot of what we've drafted up, and we anticipate bringing that to you for the April meeting.
This is not all of the language, right?
No. This is one section of probably 10.
this is just an update.
Right.
Are you aware that our remote camera was shot at Beach Ridge?
I am not.
You're not. Went to the site yesterday, and that was the first thing that Michael Bell showed me.
Okay. I'm not aware of that.
So in certain areas, we may have to build some kind of a cage around it, at least to cover 360. Well, I don't need 360, but 180 degrees, something like that.
Actually shot.
Actually shot with a rifle. With a rifle.
Okay, maybe we need 2 cameras.
Why wouldn't Republic notify you then?
That's a very good question.
Okay.
We will ask that
Yes.
in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Now, I can't verify this. He also said he understood from the one at 5 Points that that one was taken out. So you may want to ask about 5 Points. Well, this is closer, yeah. This is in my neck of the woods.
Well, I appreciate you passing that on, and we will certainly do some research on that and see what we can find out.
Yeah.
Any other
Okay.
questions on the ordinance or anything?
Thank you. Keep it strict, keep it tough. Make it work.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You have a good evening. Anita?
You have before you a handout, and I'm going to be real brief. A lot of this is the same information that was shared with you last month. For example, the first page you have there's the 2021 tax levy, excluding vehicles, and this is straight out of the Farragut system. So you can see that when we sent bills out back in August, we billed the 34.594 million. Was the actual 2021 levy billing, and if we assume the same collection rate as we had last year, which is 98.22%, then I'm estimating our 2021 levy collection revenue will be the $33,978,000, and you can see that compared to the budgeted amount of $33.750 gives us a surplus of $227,000. So tax collections look great. Moving on to sales tax. So we hit another all-time high ever. The December sales, which of course are our Christmas sales, so we would expect it to be high to begin with, but they were $1,243,601. And that is 19% up from the same time last year, which is just exceptional and really unexplainable in my opinion. So that was pretty much the way it was statewide. Statewide sales tax was up 17%, so we outperformed the state just by a couple percent there. If you look over the box to the right, that shows you what the $12,452,000 there would be, taking what we collected the first 6 months of this fiscal year and annualizing that, and that allows us to come up with an estimate as long as we continue to perform as we have been. And when we compare that to what we budgeted, you'll see that we're running a $1.7 million surplus in sales tax. Next, you'll see the general fund expenditures. I have spent most of the day reviewing these, nothing exceptional to speak about. You can look at the second page. We would expect to be at about 66.67% as we are 8 months into the fiscal year, and you can see we're at 64.1%. And that's normal. We normally do run a couple percent below budget. And that's what I have. Any questions?
Your budgeted number on that first page.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You were only off $227,000. Am I reading that right?
Yes. That's what I'm estimating. It's less than, what is that, 1/10 of 1%?
That's a good job to be that close.
Thank you.
You gave her the number. All right, you want to go into the grant award for public safety?
Yes, sir. So as a part of the state's biennial 2021-2023 budget, it included $7.5 million of non-recurring funds for 89 sheriff's offices within the state, where their counties have a population of less than 210,000 people. And of course, Beaufort County is one of those 89 sheriff's offices. So we are set to receive $84,269.66 from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. These funds have to be spent above and beyond the sheriff's office already budgeted local funding, and it has to be set aside in a special grant project fund. So you have the grant agreement before you on beginning on page 318. You have the special grant project ordinance on page 324, where we were recognizing the grant revenue, and in speaking with the chief deputy, he would like to use the funding for equipment purchases. and I'm sure he'll be happy to explain specifically what that is if you need explanation on that. And so I am asking that you accept the grant award and also adopt the grant project ordinance on page 324.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we accept the grant award with the provision that the commissioners approve of what is purchased before the purchase order is written.
Charlie, do you and Kelly, I mean, do you already have in mind what you're going to purchase? Well, we got a motion and a second. We're in the discussion.
This is actually sort of a quick hitter on the information that we received on the timing of getting the funds till now. It's all really been within probably about 4 or 5 weeks from getting the email, getting the paperwork right with the state, getting the information, actually getting the money dropped into the account. So we've been working on tentatively on what types of equipment, and I say equipment because anytime there's only been a couple of times since I've been here that something like this has occurred, but unless something changes or the sheriff tells me otherwise, anytime we get funds like this, I want us to purchase something that we can show. So if somebody comes and asks, what is it that you used with the funds, right, we'll let us show you. So we went back over the last handful of budgets that we have and looked at equipment items that our investigators and patrol has put forward that got cut off the list before we got to the point that we actually put it on the budget to present to you guys. So some of it's equipment that's at the top of the list for crime scene investigation, computer and equipment programs that will do laser renderings, and so we don't have to do the old, measurements and drawings that go along with it that we've been needing for a handful of years. We just couldn't prioritize that expense. The investigators have been trying to push for a drone for search and rescue operations, drug eradication, things of that nature. That's really relatively inexpensive. Once again, I've cut that off of our budget for the last handful of years. That's been talked about. And then the idea that goes along with the search and rescue piece of it would be a type vehicle, whether it's an ATV or a side-by-side, that goes along with the search and rescue stuff. If we got examples I can have, we've got 4 or 5 people over the last 5 or 6 years that were people that were not from the area that came to the area, and whether it was intentional or by accident got lost somewhere in the Dismal, and we're just out somewhere looking for a needle in a stack of needles, and we would have to get equipment and resources from other places that we would have to wait for hours and sometimes days, that now might be the time to look at that, since we normally wouldn't look at that in a budget. So that's pretty much what I have now, unless you have any other questions.
So if you win the grant, you would come back and share what your plans were?
From my understanding, it's a done deal. The funds.
The way I,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
per the grant agreement, we can budget it as just equipment purchases, but if it's the board's wish that we have it broken down in more detail and come before the board, we can certainly do that.
Well, the motion is that you come before the board before the purchase order is cut.
So I would almost say it sounds like if we were doing a capital purchase over the 30,000, where we get our ducks in a row in an order, we present it to finance, and then it comes to you for approval before it's signed off and go. I don't have a problem with any of that.
And that's for every dollar that's in the grant.
That's exactly right. And we're not going to bring forth anything that is foolishness. So I don't mind anything.
I think it's good business.
Okay. Any other question?
Well, go ahead.
You guys don't have a drone?
We do not.
My gosh. What kind of drone are you looking to get?
There's we have looked at the systems that the Highway Patrol uses for traffic crash reconstruction.
Yeah.
There's a system that the New Bern Police Department uses that is similar to theirs, but it has the ability of the infrared, but it also has the ability of actually facial recognition, which is interesting. The folks at Nutrien, they use drones. Aurora Fire Department uses drones. So there's a lot out there. And, I think now a lot of times we have to wait when, we have to wait for the technology is there, but we have to wait for the price point to get right. And I think it's pretty right now.
Yeah, I would think so. You're going to get just one drone?
I would say to start out, we don't have a lot of folks that we can really have as operators. So right now the plan that we've got put in paper would be that the drone would actually be assigned to a deputy that's in investigations. We would have 2 or 3 people that we send to the FAA schools and to the training to use the equipment. And then for call-out purposes, it'll be just like a referral that we already have for investigators. When it comes up, we'll send the person with the equipment and we'll do what we can and do what we have to do.
How much do these special drones cost?
It's really not that bad. I mean, the whole unit that we're looking at with everything, including the training, is about $25,000 on a unit. And that's with the hands-on training of them coming.
I would think a lot of that's training. Is it a big drone? I mean,
it's really not that bad. It's the cost is going to come with the equipment that's going to be attached, the cameras, the computer software, and the thing with me is I'm never going to touch it because I don't want to be the one that would break it. But it's going to have all the safeguards in place that you hit a button and it comes back to you. And if it starts to get low battery, it comes back to you. So I don't have to come back to you and say we lost the drone.
Okay, thanks.
Just for reference, I think 2 weeks ago, Pitt County found a 6-year-old kid that had run away from home, 5 miles away from home, with their drone.
We've used drones in searches and rescues. It's just hadn't been our drones. And the thing on that is that sometimes, that first couple of hours is the most important couple of hours. And if you're having to wait for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, then it's just nice to have it with minimal delay.
Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Thank you, Charlie. Brian, you're going to talk to us on the American Rescue Plan update.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is just a brief update on the American Rescue Plan. As you recall or may remember, on January 6th of this year, Treasury released their final rule on uses of the funds. That had been under an interim rule for a certain amount of time to receive comments, and they have now released their final rule. The good thing about the final rule that we believe is that they've allowed you to claim up to a $10 million revenue loss allowance, or you could use their formula to determine what your revenue loss was. So the question there became, well, what if I didn't have revenue loss? So I raised my hand and asked that at a meeting, and I said, I'm going to ask the stupid question in the room. Do I still get to take the $10 million in revenue loss allowance if I didn't have any revenue loss? And the answer was, yes, you can. You just take it as a revenue loss. You can take up to $10 million. So there are some jurisdictions across the state that didn't even get $10 million, and they'll be able to take every bit of their money and use it as a revenue offset. So in that vein, what we would recommend to you, and I'm not asking you to take any action tonight, I just want to update you on it. Our belief, and based on additional comments from the folks from the state with their grant programs as well related to broadband, is that the easiest way for us to do that is to claim revenue reimbursement, revenue loss on those. And then we can take those funds and use them to offset your existing costs. Now, the challenge about this is, even if it's considered a revenue offset, if you say I'm taking the revenue loss offset, then you have to still comply with the federal regulations. The only way to get out of that is to say we're using those to reimburse ourselves for some cost that we could do it. So personnel, you'll remember under CARES Act, we went in and the cleanest and easiest way for us to do that was to reimburse ourselves for public safety salaries. And in doing that, it backfilled and moved that money out so that it now went into your general fund, your fund balance. So you could use it for anything then. You cleared the hurdle of saying, I've reimbursed it for things the federal government says I can. So what we will recommend to you going forward is that we take about the $5.11 million and claim that under our $10 million revenue offset. Although we didn't have any revenue loss, we can claim we had $5.11 million in revenue loss. Then we would ask you to take that money It's over several years, and of course, we've got about, what, $17 million payroll, 15?
Yes.
$15 million, $16 million payroll. So we can apply that to our payroll and say we are using those funds to offset, which is legal under the rule, to offset those salaries for public safety. That then takes that $5.11 million and drops it into your fund balance, in which you could do whatever you want to with it because you have cleared the hurdle of meeting the rules under the federal government. Now, the exception to that is the $4 million that you've set aside for broadband. The state says, and the Institute of Government is telling us, do not pull that out. Keep that under the requirement for broadband, because you'll recall the state has some grant programs in place, and if you use your money, if you use that federal money and do it on your own, you can't have access to those grants. So what they've said is, if you're going to do broadband, which y'all set aside $4 million for that, don't take it out and use it under revenue loss. Keep it under the broadband piece, because that broadband piece is very wide, very broad, and it allows you to also chase after additional grants to match up against it. So happy to answer any of your questions. But in general, that's the piece. Really good news. It helps us get it really clean, and it allows you to be able to do some things that would not necessarily easily fit within some of the categories. So any questions? Otherwise, I'm happy to move on.
It also really extends the date, the expiration date.
It does, yes, sir, because there are some pretty tight time frames on some of the things, which we still anticipate, especially under the broadband piece, that's going to get extended. Once folks see, I mean, obviously, lots of supply chain issues right now, but when everybody starts going after fiber and everybody starts going after those things, it's going to take time to get it done. So we anticipate there'll be an extension. There was an extension under the CARES Act at the last minute. I think this one will be telegraphed a lot quicker than last week or two. But yes, it does. It eliminates that requirement that you spend it within a certain amount of time. It just rolls to your fund balance, and then you have the ability to do with it as you want to, because it's an offset.
Any questions of Brian? Okay, thank you, Brian. You want to go to your next?
I do, and I'm actually going to defer to Commissioner Rebholz on this one. It's listed as my item. The information you have on page 329 and 330 was actually written up by Commissioner Rebholz in relating to what we know and what we don't know about broadband. So I'll defer to you to explain or answer any questions you may have.
You can all read through this, and I won't take you through it, but there is a lot of money that is still coming. We don't know what the rules are going to be on a lot of that. There's 2 different grant programs right now that are on the docket, if you will, as soon as they finalize it. One is going to be called CAB, C-A-B, and it's going to be $400 million, but they haven't written the rules yet. And then behind it comes another one from the federal government, which nationwide is $42 billion, and we don't know what the rules on that is. The problem we have right now in trying to get enough information out to make a decision is the current grant program requires that the suppliers, the providers, apply for the grant, not the county. They apply. We have not gotten yet a final version of any application from any of them, right? Okay. And the deadline is the end of the month. Okay? So we may need, if we get something, we may need to have us get together to look at this proposal and make a decision whether you want to go forward with it. The one that we did see included, which was CenturyLink, did not go to Aurora, which was one of the big, which is the big area that is absent. And Charter said they were going to, who already has been awarded much of the south side, although they've walked away from some other ones already. They have not gotten back to us either. They said they would have it for this meeting. Okay? And then we have, waiting in the weeds, River Street, not in the weeds, but waiting to come forward with their type of a proposal although they're looking at one of the grants that has not yet been approved as the funding mechanism. So you can read through that. You got any questions, just ask me, but it goes into some of the details on how you get awarded there. But there's a lot we don't know in order to try to make a good decision right now.
And John, I think on number 6 under don't know is one of the big ones. We don't have good maps, and they're in the process of supposedly doing better maps.
Well, yeah. And CenturyLink says they got pretty good maps.
Right. Supposedly, as you'll recall, the way they currently do them, the way the federal government currently looks at broadband penetration is they look by census tract. So if one house in the census tract can receive it, it lights up the entire block tract. And they've changed. I think we did a presentation a while ago about they've moved to what's called a fabric method, which you have to geolocate each point where you can provide the service, and you have to be able to provide that service within 10 days of being asked to provide the service without any additional cost, without any additional cost like plowing to, putting in a main line to a customer. So it's going to be a lot better information to be able to see where it's available and where it's not available. And that's supposed to happen in the fall.
Yeah, an example of what we're talking about is that when we talked to CenturyLink, they said they could get to 25,000 homes, 2,500 homes that were underserved by the definition. River Street said there aren't any. So it's...
Yeah, so the difference in that is the federal government said, we're going to go out. You remember RDOF, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund that was put out there that everybody's bidding on? The federal government said, we have the maps, and we're going to show you everywhere there is less than 25 and 3 service. And we're going to put that out for bid. So supposedly when RDOF was awarded, that took care of everybody who had less than 25 and 3 service. But we don't know.
One of the points you made was that the great grants are due by April the 4th. So if we get one of these players to come in with a proposal, we may have to have a called meeting to take a look at it.
So the piece of that is, and it would be incumbent upon the board, I think what would make sense for the board is to say, if there are providers who want to do that, because obviously they're going to be asking you for some of your money to match up against them and help them with that. Obviously you would want to look at that proposal, and if you had competing proposals, you'd want to look at it and make the best decision based on the money you had and how many people it served. So that's why it may be a short notice.
Okay. Any other thing, John, on?
No, we're just in a waiting game right now.
Okay, Brian, you want to go into the strategic plan?
I do, yes, sir. So you'll recall 2 meetings ago, at the retreat, actually, you had Neil Emery from the association come and talk to you about strategic planning and provide some information for you and say essentially now is the next step. You discussed it a little bit briefly at last meeting. What I am hoping to receive from the board tonight is direction on whether you are going to move forward with that or not. I had a conversation with Kevin Leonard today, who is the executive director of the association, and I said, so I'm going to be asked the question tonight, if I ask the board to move forward with this, how much is it going to cost? It's a legitimate question. How much are you going to charge us? He said, at this time, there is no cost. So I'm bringing forward to you a request to tell me whether you want to move forward with a strategic planning process for this board in the future of the county that can be provided by the Association of County Commissioners at no cost.
John?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
I think it's important, again, as we said before, that we've got to have a roadmap to our future. Otherwise, we're wandering all over the place and we're not accomplishing things for the people of this county. So.
With all due respect, Commissioner Rebholz, we got here without a roadmap, and we've come a long way and done a lot of things.
We've lost 1,800 jobs in the last 10 years and 3,000 people.
Was that the commissioner's fault?
Well,
was it?
Could be.
You think it is? You have a very liberal view of government. I don't know why we need a strategic plan with all of the money that's being dumped on us, solving every problem that anybody could ever conceive of. Why do we need a strategic plan?
So you know where to put the money you're receiving. And what to spend it on. Yeah? There's all kinds of needs, and for example, we were just talking about the water system, okay? And looking at it, what the future needs were going to be, and what the future costs could be down the road. If we don't know all that type of information, you're not going to be ready when it happens.
Well, let's talk about some of those needs. Nobody wants to talk about a better library system in the county. There's a couple of other things that we put up under these funds that now apparently can be funded with these funds. So I think maybe at the next commissioners meeting, we need to go back and plow that ground over again.
And I think that's what Brian's suggesting we do with the almost $2 million. But that's got nothing to do with the strategic plan. If you had the strategic plan, you already know what to do.
I always find it interesting that you plan and then Putin attacks the Ukraine and the plan goes out the window because gas suddenly is $10 a gallon and nothing works. But
you think that's what caused it?
But the plan, to have a plan is fine.
Well, last week we had the honor of being at the ECU honors program, whatever it was. And economic development was number one. And Brian was there, John was there, Ed was there. And this is one of the things that we're competing with in other counties. People that do have a plan, they know who they want to attract and how they can create jobs. So it comes with a plan and being unified in whether you want to be a boat builder, niche market, industry, air filtration, drones was mentioned. So that all comes with having some guidance and sitting in a room and trying to say where you want Beaufort County to go in the future. So I'm going to vote for it because it's very important. So.
Well, all those years that I spent in industry with people telling me stay away from government, they're your enemy. And now that I'm over in government and I hear people in government telling me that the government was running things all the time and they're supposed to be making all these decisions for us in the future is scary. And the public needs to wake up.
Well, one of the things they talked about in the meeting was having a private-public partnership, which means that the leaders, which is our group right here, along with business leaders and the school system and the community college all try to have the same vision and work in that direction. Because the thing we keep hearing over and over again is skills, workforce development. And we're part of that, whether we want to be or not. If we're going to be successful, we've got to be on the front line. So, okay, Jerry.
One of the things all of us have to realize is, if you plan to build a house, what do? Plan. If you decide to improve on anything, what do? Plan. You cannot accomplish anything without planning. It even comes down to your normal household budget. You plan your household budget. So it is extremely important that you have a plan. And that's what we need.
Well, government has assumed the right to do this planning for us for our future without our permission. You need to keep that in mind. The board needs to also keep in mind that government-private partnerships are a form of fascism.
Now, the government-private partnership, is this like the NGO thing where
No, it's pretty.
Is it? Well, what is it?
Well,
It's where you share a goal and you share resources to make it happen.
Share resources. Now, where do the resources come from?
That's part of the plan.
The people.
Yeah.
We pay money to get a plan, and then that plan tells us how to further tax the people of our area to achieve the goals of the bureaucrats and the NGO.
You put
and then the
together,
money is
you put together a budget.
through that public-private partnership
A budget, then you
to achieve
a budget, and then you tax the people.
Gentlemen, okay, we got a question. All right, all those in favor of moving forward, raise your right hand. Those opposed, 5-2. Okay, we're down to the resolution to terminate the Red Wolf reintroduction program. And Brian, are you going to lead that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the last board meeting, you asked that we bring back a resolution to you regarding the Red Wolf program, the reintroduction program. This is a resolution that has been modified. It was originally a resolution, if you'll look at the very last whereas, on January 29th of 2015, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission put together a resolution asking these same kind of things. That's why it's really kind of technical in some of those things, where it talks about taxonometry and genomes and all those things about relating to the wolves. So I took liberty, in fact, I actually called the executive director that has changed since this last resolution was put in place from the Wildlife Resource Commission. And he said their resolution was still in place, it had not been changed and had not been rescinded. So I took their resolution and added a couple of items to it that I had heard the board express some concerns about. The majority of it is still what the Wildlife Resources Commission said. I did add the item in there about the pushing toward private lands with the Pray for the Pack program that they're doing, where they're actually paying landowners to try to improve their property so that they will provide additional food for wolves. So if you help make your property so there'll be lots of rabbits and quail and those kind of things that attract red wolves and help them survive, then they'll help you pay for it and they'll help you do things. And then I also put in there there had been some concerns expressed by individuals who had come into contact with hybrids, that they were more aggressive than either the regular coyotes or the red wolves themselves. And when they crossed and had hybrids, those were a bit more aggressive. And there were some concerns about continuing to push into private lands and increasing the human-wolf contact. That would not be right. So as you'll see, I'm not going to read the whole resolution. You can certainly do that, but just want to tell you the last resolves. So that is that the Beaufort County Commissioners request that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, 1, declare in federal rules that the red wolf is extinct in the wild in North Carolina. 2, terminate the red wolf reintroduction program for free-ranging red wolves in North Carolina. Number 3, repeal all federal rules describing, delineating, and designating conditions for red wolf restoration in North Carolina. Designate all wild canids other than foxes on the Albemarle Peninsula as coyotes or coyote hybrids. Designate that there are no federal trust canids existing on the Albemarle Peninsula, so the federal government's out of that program. Designate that all wild canids on the Albemarle Peninsula are state trust resources under the jurisdiction of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And then remove, and this was not in theirs, remove all existing radio-collared wolves from the red wolf, Canis rufus, non-essential experimental population area. So that is the resolution that was put together. It's your direction, and we're happy to take your direction on either approving that, making changes, and how you'd like, if you approve it, how you'd like for it to be distributed.
Any comments? Did you make a motion? Got a motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
I got one. Didn't you say that there was having a problem down in your area when they were messing with the cows and stuff like that?
It's mostly dogs and cats.
They're taking over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to tell the board is that I had one TV station call and they wanted to interview me on what we discussed at the last one. And I told them, I said, you really need to wait until after we have this meeting. But I said, for background information, you guys need to go from Greenville, from your office, and come down to the area. I said, we have the National Wildlife Refuge within 3 miles of where Brenda Hamilton was attacked. So it is a hot issue, and it's unless we take action, everybody thinks it's just fine to keep doing this. So I support it, and I'll be voting in favor of it.
So, Mr. Chairman, one of the items, and I know Commissioner Richardson, I believe, is in favor of the motion, but it speaks to using the Fish and Wildlife Service has a great website related to the red wolf. They put a lot of information out there. They put it all out there. And if you look at theirs, and it's one of the whereas's in here, that in 2012, their estimate was at its peak at 100 to 120 red wolves in the area. And that has steadily declined with the last release information that they showed in 2021, that there are only 17 to 20 red wolves with a 30 to 35% number of mortalities as a function of the population. So the program in itself cannot sustain itself without human intervention, which is nothing but pouring money into it and causing additional issues locally. So just for that piece, looking at it from a program analysis, it ought to be done away with.
Brian, did you keep a number of those crossbreeds?
They have some estimates out there. They also have a program now where they are trapping coyotes and sterilizing the coyotes in an attempt to stop the crossbreeding. I think that's like spitting in the ocean. The numbers just don't seem to make that work. I'm not a wildlife biologist, but to me, the common sense answer is it just doesn't work.
Well, if you talk to people in my neighborhood, people do not walk at night and early in the morning anymore just because of the fear of one of these crossbreeds attacking. Okay, any other comments? All those in favor of the resolution, raise your right hand. Thank you. Brian, you want to go into the COVID-19 essential worker payment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You'll recall at the last board meeting, there was a request by the health department to use some state funding that they had received for an essential worker payment, one-time payment, for their efforts during the certain period of time related to COVID. The board at that time tabled that matter and said there were some comments regarding it, and one of those comments that came directly to us was, can you do, what about doing this for everybody? If you want to do it for one group, let's do it for everybody. Can you do that, and can you fund that? So in our research, you have the information here. We went back and looked at it. We took the health department with the approval or the recommendation of the health department board, pushed forward a $1,200, $100 a month for that time period, $1,200 a month, or $1,200 one-time payment. So we use that as the starting point. And we went back and looked at, because you've done this before, under the CARES Act, where you made an essential payment to workers. So we use that same formula. So we looked at a time frame and we said, okay, full-time employees who were hired prior to this date and worked at least through this date would get $1,200. If you were hired after this certain date, and you can see all that written in there, that was after July 1 of 21, they would get half of that, or $600. And then there was $300 for part-time employees who worked at least 200 hours during that time period. So we tried to model it on an existing program that you've done before, just for fairness wise, because we knew that would be the question. The total cost of this package, which you want to know, is $441,344. But the impact to the general fund is only $281,524, based on the health department using the state money that they said they were going to use initially, and the additional reimbursement that you get from the state of North Carolina under DSS. So that's the impact to the general fund, the $281,524. But also remember, when it's all said and done, you can take your ARPA money and reimburse yourself on this. So you have a list of the budget amendment that makes those changes, and you also have a list of every employee that's eligible for it in the package, including the Board of Commissioners, that runs through page 352. So happy to answer any questions. If I can't answer them, Anita can certainly answer them. But that's what the board asked, and what we presented to you is that program which would provide those funding.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. John?
I have no problem with it, except I think we ought to exempt ourselves.
I don't. You talking about exempting the commissioner?
I don't have a problem. That's what they give.
Yeah.
I see John got plenty of money, so he gonna give us, we're gonna 50 cents.
2 cents on the dollar.
So will you change the motion to exempt the commissioners?
Most definitely. I'll make a motion to I'll accept that motion with that exemption. I make that motion with that exemption.
Okay. And second, okay. Further comments? Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, well, unanimous. All right. Brian, the acceptance of the the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund on the Wrights Creek.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is the part of grant that, and I'll take you back a couple years, or a year and a half or so, back to December 7th of 2020. The board approved submitting a request grant application to PARTIF to continue the work that you started at Wrights Creek and to provide the matching funds if that was awarded. We did do that. So in January of this year, we were notified that Parks Recreation Trust Fund awarded Beaufort County $249,895 for the 50-50 matching project. That project will install 550 linear feet of riprap revetment along the eastern shore of Wrights Creek and around the point into the gut for stabilization. It will also create a 100 by 40 gravel parking lot with ADA spaces and an access path. It will install a 20 by 20 foot picnic shelter and associated amenities. It will build a 1,200 square foot fishing pier and build a 700 linear foot ADA accessible walking path and install an ADA accessible canoe / kayak launch in the gut. We've talked to the Middies. They were the ones that wrote the grant for us. We've asked them would they consider administering the grant for us. There is a 5% administrative allowance in the budget, and they said they would do it for that cost. So the impact is $249,895 to the general fund. You have a copy of the award letter from the state that needs to be signed if you accept the grant. You have a copy of the cost. You have a site plan on page 364 that shows you the long-term planning on that, because there are additional items that we would look to continue to do out there with additional funding opportunities. And you have a budget amendment, and you have a project ordinance that would allow us to move forward with this project. So we would recommend your approval based on prior actions of the board.
So I have a motion
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What happens if you can't get all of that for $249,000?
Then we would have a conversation with the state about whether they would provide additional funding or whether we would have to reduce the scope. But it may be a challenge now based on.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get all that for $249,000. I think you're going to be lucky if you get the revetment and maybe the pier, but it's a big reach.
Well, the total project, because it's a 50-50 match, is $499,000. The biggest item in there is the riff-raff, which is 550 feet.
Right. Okay. It's a 50-50 match.
Yes. And the biggest item is the riff-raff.
Yeah, and there may be. I mean, you bring a good point. We're running into the cost of materials is going up, so there may be a challenge with that. So we have several years to get it done. So hopefully we'll be okay, but there's some contingency in there, but it is a 50-50 match. So it's almost a $500,000 project.
Well, I'm assuming the first thing we would do is stabilize the shore line on it.
Well, what we would do is get our numbers and make sure we were good in the market and then do the whole project, because the state wants us to do the whole project. If we found where we were in a process where we wouldn't be able to meet all the pieces of it, then we would have to have that conversation with the state to make sure that they were okay with that, because we don't want to get money clawed back, seeing that happen too many times with folks.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion or questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes.
The money's available now. The money also could be available later. if we obligate this board or future board to spend that money with materials, labor as high as it is right now with inflation soaring, I think there are boards of commissioners that either this one or the next that would spend that money and obligate this county to that much or even more. So I don't think I can vote for it.
Well, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm in a real quandary over this. The history on this project is this is to be a park at Wrights Creek. The county doesn't have a park anywhere. And we bought this piece of property for $400,000, which it was only worth $50,000. And I am very familiar with this property. The county bought it with me sitting here telling them, your shoreline is eroding away and you have a dike that has dredge spoils behind it, and you're taking on a liability that you don't really need to be taking on. And as the commissioners showed me, they went ahead and voted for this anyway. Now I'm in a position as a commissioner where the county has a risk, and that is that shoreline. And if I vote against this, I'm putting the county at more risk. This is one of the dumbest ideas that the county has ever come up with, is this park, and the amount of money that's already been sunk into it. So as a commissioner, I'm going to vote for this moronic idea simply because we keep digging the hole deeper at Wrights Creek. And I've advocated the first of the year and at other times, abandon the project and get out of it. It was a stupid idea to begin with. So I'm now in a position where in order to save the money, county money, I'm going to have to vote for this equal grant to keep us from having a greater liability, because when the dike goes out on this, Wrights Creek is a dredged waterway. It is a navigable waterway. You're going to have a several $million-dollar liability because of the fact that it's dredged. All those spoils are going to go into the bottom of the dredge area, and we're going to have to clean it out. So this is a great example of what I keep talking about when government keeps getting into projects and things that they think they know all about, and they're not willing to listen to anybody. Typical government project.
If I remember correctly, before I was a commissioner, which is 7 years ago, the Board of Commissioners had the property appraised. It was one site, had it appraised, and then when they were trying to put the money together along with Wildlife Commission, it was agreed to do it in 2 phases. And of course, this is the second phase. I called Brian one day, and I don't know what's been a year ago or 2 years ago, and said, Brian, come down and take a look at this erosion, what's happening. And some of that is along that shoreline, which is where the Wildlife Commission has the boats go out and right out on the corner. To my knowledge, the rest of it, as you go around towards Wrights Creek, the erosion is, it's pretty stable there.
Not really. No, that's not true.
But anyway, it's a project that we really need to see finished if there's enough money, and the price comes in where we can do it.
So the board will recall that we had this grant previously, and when we were awarded the grant to do the boat land, the pier and the other pieces of it, that was when there was some concern expressed about the erosion. During that time frame, we were able to acquire a grant from the state to do an erosion control study. When we did the erosion control study, they came back with a recommendation of the riprap revetment. At that time, we didn't have enough time to complete the job, and we didn't have enough money in that part of grant to do it. So we turned the part of grant back in. This was a year or so ago. We turned it back into the state. And we said to them, can we come back to you? Because what we don't want to do is screw up a grant project and then get blacklisted and not ever be able to get a grant again. And they said, yes, you can reapply. So we reapplied. That's when we did it in 2020. So this project then takes into account taking care of the riprap revetment. This has been a long process.
It's been probably 10 years?
It was in play when I got here, so.
I think it's been about 10 years from the beginning.
Do you actually really believe our liability could extend into the $1 million range if the spoils do break through the dam?
Well, if the dike goes away and the spoils break out and they go into Wrights Creek, you're going to have the federal government, the Corps of Engineers on you. You're going to spend $300,000 in consulting fees alone. It's going to go on and on and on and on.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the, let's see, we got the agreement, the budget amendment, and the project ordinance, right? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay, Hood, you're up.
Okay, the item is Sheriff's Office staffing, and the report just says he has 17 vacancies over there right now. I don't know whether you want to comment or not, Charlie. I don't really need anything unless you want to give something.
We've got 5 openings sworn. 4 of those were positions that were reallocated in this year's budget. We've got, I think your report will probably say 9 openings in the jail. We have had a hire within the last month that had previous experience with us, but there will still be 8 to 10 weeks of training in that. We've got 2 pretty good candidates. One that I know of is already been offered and should have a starting date in the jail. The other one we've got to work on a little bit more as far as, you know, some of the stuff with the application. So 8 in the jail, 5 sworn, and 2 telecommunicators. You know, so that should get us right near where the openings are. We're actively recruiting. We're trying to compete with, you know, folks in law enforcement, other detention centers, other, you know, industries. You know, so we're doing, I think, just about everything that we can, and we are, you know, seeing some, you know, some good signs, some good interest. But, you know, things just take time. Overall, I think the agency is doing well as far as some of the moves and shakeups that we've needed to do to try to keep things moving. I think everybody's doing really well, and but any help that we can get from anybody, including the commissioners, we would love to have.
Thank you.
Did you hold a job fair?
We did.
Okay.
And we got great. I think there was we did the job fair at the college. We were the only agency. I think there was about 16 folks that showed up, and out of that we got about 8 applications and a whole bunch of maybes. Out of those applications, we've got 3 hired.
You plan to do another one?
Yes.
Okay.
And in that one, I think Kelly could probably you know, correct me on that, but you know, a couple of other agencies wanted to get on board with it, but we didn't want to compete at our own job fair, so we probably could have had more people that go, but we politely turned that down.
Thank you, Charlie.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Next item, unless somebody has a comment, is to a discussion on the policy on percentage raises. And this is a question that I have to all of my fellow commissioners. When we vote in the budget for a COLA increase, like 1% or 1.5%, is it your understanding that every employee gets that percentage increase?
Yes. Yes.
I have complaints, so I guess now my question to the manager is, I have complaints from various departments that people did not get their COLA. So my question to the manager is, tell me why they didn't get their COLA.
My question to you would be, tell them to call me and I'll show them where they got their COLA, because every employee, including the county commissioners, got a COLA when you voted on it. So if there's somebody who said they didn't, tell them to call me and we will show them.
Okay, well, what I'm hearing is, I'll tell you the wrinkle that I'm hearing, is that some people did not get a COLA because they were already above the midpoint.
No, you may be confused. They may be confusing the several years, or how many years ago? How many years ago we did? 2017 when we did the pay plan, the pay implementation plan. Remember when we looked at those numbers and we said, okay, everybody's going to get to here. based on the number of years you've been, if you're already here. So there were some issues there where if people were already at a certain level, then they didn't get something. But for COLA, that's across the board, and if somebody says they didn't, please tell them to give me a call.
All right, let's make this simple. Just for last year's COLA, if they didn't get a COLA last year, they need to be calling you.
You didn't approve a COLA in last year's budget. You did make an adjustment for the one-time, the longevity. There was not a.
So that was the only adjustment, was the longevity last year, not a COLA.
If I'm remembering correctly, you did the pay plan implementation in February of 2021. If I'm remembering correctly, you did the pay plan implementation in February of 2021, and then with the budget that started July 1, 2021, you chose not to do a COLA because you had just done the pay plan implementation, but you did adopt the longevity program.
Okay.
That's what I recall.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That clears that up. Well, now, the next item, unless somebody has a comment, is on ethics policy. And within our ethics policy, is it ethical for an employee of the county to serve on a board that oversees his department?
To what?
Sort of like
An example.
Example.
Well, I'll give you an example in a minute, but we need to answer the question first. Is it ethical for an employee of the county to serve on a board that oversees, well, any department for that matter, but it's specifically the department that he works for?
No.
Well,
you want to know the answer because you're going to make a personality decision.
No.
What I'm asking you guys to do is to make a decision.
Wouldn't you want the department manager to be on the board?
Not necessarily, no. It's a policy-making board. He's already got all the input in the world as the manager. And we're not talking about the manager. We're talking about, is it ethical for any person who is an employee of the county to serve on a board that has oversight responsibilities for his department? That's real simple. I don't know how to explain it any other way. But unless you guys want to say, well, wonder who it is so we can skew this. Now, it may be fair. Get fairness into this. Yes or no?
I think it is ethical if this person works with that board and gives guidance, but is a non-voting member. Well, not even a member, just not on the board. I mean, they can be there in an advisory capacity.
Every employee is an advisory capacity to anything that's going on. So
I'm fine with the advisory capacity component, but not to serve on the board and be a voting member. That on its face would be wrong. Because then you've got a problem with everything that affects them. They really shouldn't be able to vote on it.
I would think the Institute of Government would have already addressed this.
We've got problems with conflict of interest in this county.
No, the Institute of Government would not be involved in this at all as an ethical matter. Do we want county employees serving on boards that oversee their department? Now, you guys are all sitting there saying, well, when you tell me who it is, I'll decide because I'm going to make a personality. Then I don't trust you when you do that. You've got an ethical problem yourself.
I think what you're talking about, the only one that I'm aware of is the EMS oversight. Is there a different one? I'm not using any names, but
if it were that one, is it ethical to appoint a person that works for EMS and is paid for working for EMS to an oversight board?
So I guess it's a question, I'm not sure it's really an ethical question, it's a policy question moreover. I mean, if they were doing something that was unethical, then it would be an ethics question. But if they're serving in a role that has been established by the Board of Commissioners, then I would say it was a policy decision and not an ethical decision. Does that, right? I mean, if I was appointed into that role because the board had established the committee and said we need this representation, and I served in that, then I wouldn't be acting unethically by serving on the board. I may be acting unethically if I was doing something to gain, for personal gain related to it, but that would also may be criminal.
But when do you start separating this? I mean, it's better to have a clean situation where a person is not put in a position that they could be self-serving, whether they are or not. Do we want that as managers and policy setters in this county? Do we want to have that as a practice?
I would agree that you have to be very careful, but I think there's opportunities for everyone in everything they do to be self-serving. You have to be. I think that's just the nature of humans, and we have to be very careful. And we have you have a policy in the personnel policy that talks about what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do. But if the board says we don't want the employee, and typically, and I'm thinking about advisory boards, then if we don't want that expertise sitting there, then maybe then. Because it's all of them are advisory. They're advisory. The ones that I know of are advisory and advisory roles. They're not governance boards. They're advisory boards. So I think you made the comment that everybody individually is an advisory piece anyway. So if the board says we don't want it, then you're going to need to go back and look at some of your committee assignments or your ordinances related to that. But I don't know that there's any, from my perspective, there's nobody serving in a governance role. You guys are serving in the governance role. There's not an employee serving in a governance role over themselves. They may be in an advisory role, but that advisory is coming up to the Board of Commissioners that may impact them. But I'm going to tell you the same thing. I'm going to say, I'm going to advise you to do what I think is best relating to the situation, just like I would think they would.
Well, from the standpoint of a commissioner, do you really want to start loading your boards up and commissions up with employees of the county? Even in a minimal capacity, let's take it to the extreme, and let's say you have a board with 5 members and they're all employees of the county and they're in an oversight, policy-making, advisory position. Do you really want to do that? Is that good governance?
Well, most of the ones that I've seen us appoint or be involved in, we specify what the representation is on there. That you've got to have this person representing the department, or one person from a commissioner, one person from somewhere else. I mean, have you got a specific example of where you think that we have a problem and needs to be changed?
Well, but I'm not talking specific, I'm talking policy. We're a policy-setting board. We don't base our decisions based on personality, and that's what's going on in this room right now.
Well, let me clear it up. Since you can't get the answer you want, I'm going to give it to you. I do not have a problem with it.
It is bad governance. It is the worst kind of governance, and if y'all can't make a decision tonight, I'll bring a policy back at the next meeting, because it is not a good thing to do. There have been a lot of problems in government, a lot of places with people wiggling their ways into positions of influence within the government, serving on boards and commissions, and it should be avoided.
Well, I told you my position, and it ain't going to change unless you bring 15 policies.
You want to get to your next one? Your lawsuit against illegal immigrants.
Okay, all I'm going to say is I'm still looking at the amicus briefs thing. I just haven't had time to make it go anywhere, but we'll be back with it.
When you do that, take a look at the Cato Institute.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
Because they have, they'll give you some ideas to do and not do.
Okay, that's great. The next one is a county litigation discussion. All I want to know myself, I'm not going to give a report because I'm not in the position of knowing anything. Do we have any new lawsuits lodged against Beaufort County?
As of last Thursday, no.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And we did have, which has now been straightened out again, the one with the lawsuit, I sent you all
yes, today.
a copy of the thing. The lawsuit involving the young man that died over at the hospital, and he sued the county and the sheriff and all that stuff. That was dismissed on a summary judgment motion. Nobody on the other side filed any answer, and then a notice. And I said, it's all over with unless somebody appeals it. I didn't frankly see anybody could do that. But an attorney, the other attorney on the other side did file a notice of appeal. But we've since gone back to him. He thought he could file a notice of appeal and then withdraw and just let his clients worry about it. And the law will not allow him to do that. And he understands that. Anyway, it's all over with. Let's go.
Okay.
Other attorneys, Joe.
Okay, Stan, you're up.
Okay. I think we all understand, or we should understand, that all politics governing is local, especially now with inflation approaching 10%, gas at $4.19 a gallon just today, and Beaufort County a rise of almost 100% in 1 year. These things, bad policy at every level of government affects us here. One of the worst policies that has been enacted by the federal government in my lifetime is an undefended, open southern border and resettlement project that is ongoing right now. There are illegal migrants being moved all over the country in the dead of night, semi-processed, and nobody knows where they're going and how many of them are going there. What I'm asking is that these commissioners, we commissioners, be resolved to request of our staff to find out any information, find the avenues of information that will give us the understanding we need as to what is happening in real time. I can read the resolution, but if you people are resolved to accept it, I say we go along with it right now. But if you would like for me to read it, I shall read it.
I'm okay. I read it.
So moved.
Second. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Okay, a motion and a second.
Well, I guess I'll second it. You made
You made the motion. You made the motion.
Yeah, I'll second it.
And the second. Questions? Randy?
Well, once again, if we could simplify this thing, I'd love to see it pass. But to just simply say, let us know if you hear anything, because I don't know that there's been any incident of illegal aliens being brought to Beaufort County.
You're not going to know unless we find out about it.
I hate to see staff spend so much time on this.
No.
Excuse me, let Randy finish,
sorry.
okay?
You spend so much time on this when if they hear something, they should say something. I'd love to know if this is happening in Beaufort County. Now, what I'm going to do about it, I don't know, because we take federal money and we're kind of obligated to do what they say, I think, but I don't know that any of this has happened. But I'd like to be notified, but it won't pass because of how it's written once again. So once again, I'd like to see it simplified so it will pass or possibly pass. So, but we can carry on like it is.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think what Commissioner Deathridge is only asking for is that the manager can make phone calls to department heads and say, what do you know and when did you know it, and give me some information. He's not asking for a full-scale investigation, if you will. He's asking for an inquiry and the funneling of information.
It's my understanding that no one calls when the airplane lands. I mean, have they notified any county in the whole United States when something's going to happen?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any clandestine programs that are going on. Not been notified of that or haven't heard of that. But I do know that we've reached out before based on this board's request. There is a position at North Carolina DHHS who is in charge of resettlement. So I'm sure there are some, with Ukraine right now, there are probably some opportunities for folks to come in. So there is a contact at the state of North Carolina. I was trying to look real quick on my email for it, but there is an office that handles resettlement, and they may take refugees or immigrants. So there is a contact there, and I can certainly reach out to them and say, what are your current programs? Do you have anybody that you're locating in Beaufort County? Typically, with refugee programs, as I remember from the last conversation, they work mostly with NGOs and church organizations to help settle those folks, so they don't call up the local government and say, where are you going to put folks? Because we don't have those resources. So, but I'm happy to reach out to that like we did before and just ask the question. But that's the only contact I would be aware of that we would have some direct information.
So what you're saying is there's really no additional information at this point in time on anything that's happening in Beaufort County?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm happy to reach out. I'll certainly reach out and just say, is there something going on, and bring that back to the board at the next meeting.
So you would tell us if you knew?
I would be, this board asked that if we knew of any of those, we tell you, and I would certainly tell you if I knew that.
Okay, I'd like to counter. Okay, I admit I use precise language when I write, and a lot of times you guys want to dance around the issue. This is a very serious issue. It is an affront to all of my constituents. Maybe not yours, Randy, but to mine, this is an affront. Now, my precise language may offend you guys, and if it does, I'm sorry. I understand we got a center-left caucus up here, and you guys work tightly together to affect county business. I get that, but this is more important than your political aspirations and your machinations. We've got an issue where right now we're spending at least $4 million educating illegals in this county. I found out this weekend, after I'd written this resolution, there is the ability for illegals to get on the food stamp program and then qualify for a whole lot of more money. And I found that from somebody who works at DHS in another county, and I'm going to be doing research on that. Now, if this board does not have the resolve to be on top of this with both feet, it's not about airplanes, it could be buses, but it is NGOs. You said it right. NGOs, that's how they slide them in. That is doing this right now, and this board it either shows resolve or it doesn't. We're going to have semantic issues about the way I write. Fine. Write it yourself, but you write it well enough that it shows proper resolve by this board. And I'd like to see a little initiative by you commissioners to take some initiative to represent your constituents the way I represent mine.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed?
Thank you. Okay, I want my 2 minutes on ending the meeting.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it.
This is the most unusual commissioners meeting that I have attended in the 20-something years that I've been a commissioner. We sat here tonight and we talked about millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. We bought things that we don't need, that we will never use. We spent money for things because money was gifted to us that the citizens of this county will never see the benefit of. We are a part of the problem. If you ever wondered why you got 10% inflation and why things keep going up, it's because more money is chasing fewer goods, and we are spending the money to buy all of this stuff with, supposedly with free money that's given to us by the federal government. This commissioner meeting is the least benefit to the people of Beaufort County that I have ever sat in. It is a disgrace.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand.